The story follows Niro, a slave boy, in a world once ravaged by the Shadow Lord Secneum. Now Niro is determined to challenge a society that sees slaves as less than human. It begins with a couple gathering firewood in the forest. On their way back, they come across a field of decaying corpses. They barely react. Scenes like this are all too common. Suddenly, they hear a baby crying. Turning around, they find an infant cradled in the arms of a dead elf. The father is likely long gone. Though hesitant at first, afraid to bring a child into their brutal world, they eventually take the baby in. It's then revealed they're slaves, which explains their fear. 5 years later, the child, now named Niro, is 6. His adoptive father brings him to a hidden hatch that leads to an underground library built by their ancestors to prepare future generations. The father urges Niro to keep it secret and use it to ready himself for the changing world. Classic death flag, he dies soon after. Years pass. At his grave, Niro stands with his mother and twin sisters. A stranger appears, revealing he poisoned Niro's father out of jealousy. He once wanted to buy Niro's mother at an auction. Though furious, she's powerless against a free commoner. As he leaves, he hints that she'll be sold off soon. Sure enough, she's sold to her husband's killer. Not long after, Niro finds her dead in the street. Guards arrest the killer, but it's too late. Niro is left alone with his sisters, orphaned again. Shielding their eyes from the sight, he silently vows to fulfill his father's dream and protect what's left of his family. Niro keeps training, hoping to grow strong enough to protect his sisters, Wendy and Sylvie. One night, they express fear of being separated by different masters. Niro reassures them. His plan is to get them all accepted into Excanum Academy, the same school where the current emperor, once a slave himself, rose to power. A year later, the emperor arrives in Niro's town for a meeting, setting the stage for what's to come. The emperor arrives in the region and is greeted by the local nobles, the Regis family. There, he meets young Master Even, who, like Niro, dreams of entering Excanum Academy. As they walk to Even's treehouse, the boy shares his wish to become a magician like his father and shows off impressive magical skills for his age. Suddenly, a stampede of bulls charges toward them. The guards fail to stop the herd, but Even manages to halt one with magic, putting the guards to shame. Just as things spiral, Niro appears and calms the bulls using his elf-born communion ability. One bull ignores him, so Niro grabs a sword and kills it. The emperor, curious, asks Niro whether it was magic or communion. Niro claims it wasn't magic. He simply fed the bulls before, and animals avoid those who feed them. When asked what he wants as a reward, Niro says he wants to attend Excanum, shocking Even and the others. But it turns out Niro had secretly used communion to provoke the bulls in the first place, all to win favor from the emperor. Unfortunately for him, the emperor sees through the act and sentences Niro to life in the mines. That plan backfired hard. On the journey to the mines, Niro travels with other slaves and guards. They discuss how the mines are rich in magic ore, highly addictive to monsters, making attacks common. At home, Wendy and Sylvie are left behind, anxious and alone. As they worry, the elder master is approached by a blonde noble offering 300 gold to buy the twins. The master hesitates, wary of the noble's disturbing reputation, but as the offer climbs to 600 gold, his attitude begins to shift. Back with Niro, he's whipped after expressing his rage. Suddenly, a rabid wolf attacks and kills a slave before being killed by the guards. The group eventually arrives at the mine, where they're immediately forced to work. A former commoner tries to avoid mining duties, asking for an administrative role, but is instantly beheaded. Wrong move. Later, while mining, a monster appears, killing a guard and overpowering the warden. Niro steps in and slays the creature, saving the warden's life. Thankfully, back at home, the master decides not to sell the twins despite the noble's persistence. As a reward for his bravery, Niro is made a temporary guard. Though it's not a full promotion, it's the first real break he's had. The warden assigns a dark knight to train him in swordsmanship, and Niro quickly proves himself to be a natural. His rapid improvement surprises the guards. Too bad he's still just a slave. While Niro trains, a goblin lurks nearby, clearly plotting something. Unaware, Niro finishes practice with a smile, only to run into angry slaves upset that he's being treated better than the rest. It's been a while since we've had to deal with annoying side characters. After a clash, an old slave chats with Niro, who vents about how ungrateful the other slaves were. But he brushes it off, saying it's just human nature to resent those doing better. Suddenly, a horn blares. Combat's coming. Niro exits the mine and sees the warden kneeling before a hulking monster leading a goblin horde. The thing's got a neck longer than a one-piece plotline. The warden says reinforcements are on the way, then promptly gets decapitated by the monster. Nero's mentor, the idle Dark Knight, shows up and cuts down a few goblins before getting himself killed just as fast. Should have brought Goblin Slayer instead. Terrified, Niro rushes back into the mines, only to find the slaves kneeling, ready to surrender to their new overlords. Unfortunately, the monsters weren't interested in worshippers, just meat. As they charge in, Niro steps up, taking out the goblins to protect the others. Meanwhile, a portal opens outside and incinerates a monster with fire magic. Back in the mines, Niro is skewered on the monster's sword, barely alive after saving everyone. Just as it's about to finish him off, the Emperor appears and burns the beast with his flaming sword. As he fades, Niro asks the Emperor to credit his sisters with his bravery, but the Emperor refuses and heals him instead. Then, 3 slaves step forward, falsely claiming they were the heroes who saved the mine. The Emperor, seeing through the lies, roasts them on the spot. Lesson learned: don't lie to the Emperor. Impressed with Nero's bravery, he declares that Niro will attend Excanum, the elite academy. Niro reunites with Wendy and Silly for an emotional farewell before leaving. As he prepares to hop into the luggage cart, a knight intervenes, insisting Niro be treated with respect, annoying the noble brat Evan already inside. Niro opts for the luggage spot anyway, probably to avoid drama. The knight backs off, but warns that Niro better not arrive at the academy in bad shape, or else. On the way, Niro clutches his sword, thinking back to the moment he recovered. The Emperor had gifted him Skiibbus's blade, his former warden's sword. It was the first time Niro could hold a weapon freely, no longer a slave. When they reach Excanum, Niro arrives with the Regis family, including Evan and his escort. Shockingly, the Emperor had made Niro the Regis family's adoptive son, leaving Evan speechless. Niro really stays getting adopted. Inside, Evan coldly tells Niro to pretend they're not related. Later, all new students gather in the Grand Hall, where headmistress Katia Mereges welcomes them. She highlights the legacy of those descended from the heroes of Emperor Muren's war, including lineages from sages Kundin and Atramus, the 3 elven royal families under Queen Lundil, and the Black Knight, Gayan. Time for some juicy world building. Niro was quietly shunned by the other students because he was a slave, unlike most of them. After the opening ceremony, a bald instructor led them to a field and informed everyone that they had 1 month to pass an entrance exam to become official academy students. Failing meant going home. The exam required teams of 5, with no gender restrictions. Interestingly, it wasn't the usual 3-person group. Some male students were eager to team up with the 3 elven princesses from the royal family. But since elves had excellent hearing, one of the princesses slapped a guy who made a crude comment. That moment left an impression on Niro. He saw her as the female lead. Eventually, Niro ended up in a group with his rival Even, a female slave, and 2 noble boys. Typical setup. Of course, the rivals are grouped together. As soon as they reached their shared room, Even barked orders. Niro and the girl had to bathe because he didn't want them stinking up the place, and Niro was told to call him Master. Outside the bathhouse, the girl tried to make small talk, but Niro told her to lay low. While bathing, he wondered why the Emperor spared his life, eventually deciding that he was meant to prove himself at the academy. Back in the room, Even had Niro do laundry. When the girl offered to help, Niro told her not to get involved. That night, one noble told the female slave to dance. Since she couldn't, she sang instead. They all went to sleep afterward. Poor kids stuck with the spoiled ones. The next morning, Niro brought Even breakfast, but Even made him fetch food for the whole group. As Niro and the girl returned, she accidentally bumped into him, spilling the food. They gave up their own breakfast to replace it. While cleaning the mess, Niro snapped at her, but remembered the old slave in the mines telling him not to be a jerk. The following day, students had to choose sparring partners. One chubby noble picked Niro, thinking he'd be easy to beat. The other chose the female slave, but Niro shattered the noble's wooden sword instantly. Thinking it was just a faulty weapon, the instructor handed the noble another. Niro broke that too, stunning everyone, including the elf princess. The instructor finally acknowledged Niro's sword skills. Victors were sent to the right side of the field. Niro stood there first. The elf princess soon joined him. They spoke briefly, and when Niro addressed her formally, she was confused. He explained he was a slave, revealing how unfamiliar elves were with human slavery. Then Ivan showed up. He claimed to have met the princess 3 years ago, but she didn't remember. Ivan moved in close to Niro, subtly warning him not to outshine nobles again. Later that night, the female slave's face was bruised. The 3 nobles, including Ivan, entered the room. After Nero defeats one of the nobles, they retaliate by humiliating him, forcing him to crawl on all fours like a horse while they ride on his back. They do the same to the female slave. Once the nobles leave, she breaks down in tears, but Nero keeps smiling and urges her to do the same. Later that night, Nero stands over a sleeping Ivan, sword in hand. For a moment, he considers killing him, but worries about the danger it might bring to his sisters. He backs down, returns to bed, but his fury still burns. The nobles haven't seen the last of him. The next day, a magic class begins. The instructor explains that everyone has mana, including slaves, which is the source of magic. He demonstrates this using the chant Anakrasha and encourages the class to try it. Ivan, ever the show-off, uses a more advanced chant to conjure a huge fire, earning applause from everyone. Once alone, the instructor warns him, using such spells at his age is illegal. Nero also manages to create a decent flame, though smaller and short-lived. The class then heads to a training field where the instructor teaches the fire arrow spell. Though basic, he shows how powerful it can be when mastered. Only those who hit the target get to go home. As everyone starts practicing, Nero struggles to succeed. Then, one of the nobles accidentally burns his only pair of shoes lovingly made by his adoptive mother. Nero's frustration grows. Even after everyone leaves, he keeps trying until he finally lands the spell. The instructor praises his persistence, but calls him out for holding back. Nero admits he doesn't want to stand out. That's when he unleashes a massive fireball, obliterating the dummy. Impressed, the instructor realizes Nero is no ordinary student. He warns Nero to master his anger before it destroys him. Later, the students are informed that the exam begins in 3 days. It's a survival test. They must make it through a trail filled with monsters using only one weapon and one spell, fire arrow. 2 members from each group will fail. The twist: death isn't permanent. Students can be revived. Still, many are outraged, especially the nobles. But the instructors make it clear. Their parents agreed. They're no longer kids. They're soldiers now. If any student wanted to quit before the exam, they were free to do so. But of course, no one backed down. So, the exam was set to begin in 3 days. The female instructor explained one final twist. At the end of the trail stood a wooden bridge where students might face off against their teammates, since only 3 could move on from each group. Nero was thrilled. It was finally time for revenge. The next morning, Nero wakes to find his shoes shredded. One of the nobles had used them for his jog and destroyed them. Just another petty act to add to the list. The female slave tries asking the instructor for a new pair, but no replacement could be provided. On the day of the exam, Nero, Ivan, and the 2 nobles gather at the trail's entrance, but the female slave is missing, putting her at risk of disqualification. Despite being barefoot, Nero presses on, struggling to fight off monsters. Midway through, the female slave catches up and gifts Nero a pair of makeshift shoes she crafted from her own, heart-melting stuff. Meanwhile, the overconfident nobles start to falter, suffering injuries along the way. At the route's intersection, they regroup with Ivan. While they're distracted, Nero takes off toward the bridge to lie in wait. The fat noble tries to force his way past, but Nero stabs his shoulder and knocks him aside, though the instructor catches him before he falls to his death. The second noble attacks, but Nero easily blocks the strike and shatters his sword. Desperate, the noble casts fire arrow, thinking Nero's weak in magic. Bad call. Nero's fire arrow is even bigger and knocks him down. Now, it's Ivan versus Nero. Nero confronts him about sabotaging his shoes, but Ivan says nothing. They clash evenly in both sword and magic, until Ivan suddenly uses a banned spell, teleportation. While the instructor watches silently, curious how it'll play out, Ivan lands a massive flame attack. Nero nearly falls off the bridge, but clings to the ledge. Ivan tries to finish him with another spell, but Nero's pendant activates, shielding him. Clutch move. Nero counters with a fire arrow and sends Ivan off the bridge, but Ivan grabs on, just like Nero did. In a twist, Nero helps him back up. Afterward, Nero finds the female slave and walks with her to the finish. Later, the 2 sit on a rooftop, talking about how they both managed to enter the academy despite being slaves. She finally opens up. She was raised by her father, and their master was a kind man. When the master's son nearly drowned, her father risked his life to save him. Sadly, her father didn't survive, and the master's son was left in a coma. Since the boy had been accepted into Excanum Academy, the master gave his admission letter to the female slave instead. That's how she ended up at the academy, a rare gesture of decency in a world filled with corrupt masters. Later, the students were told to gather at the storage house, where they received their official academy uniforms. After changing, the headmistress briefly appeared to congratulate them before vanishing again. The bald instructor then reorganized everyone into 6 groups. This time, even, Nerea, finally a name, and Nero were all placed in separate groups, finally giving Nero a break from the chaos. Nero's new group includes the elf princess Tirasu, Tarek, the brawny heir of the Black Knight lineage, and 3 other less notable classmates. One big change: boys and girls would now be in separate dorms. When asked who wanted to be group leader, both Tirasu and Tarek volunteered, so the instructor let them settle it physically. Tarek showed off his raw power by easily lifting a huge boulder and slicing it in 2 with a sword. Classic meathead. Tirasu took a smarter approach. She used her bow to precisely shatter both halves into smaller pieces, impressing everyone and earning the leader spot. Niro was especially odd. Later, the group met in the hallway to lay down their team rules, with Tirasu taking charge. Rule 1. All decisions must be made as a group. Rule 2. Boys can't come within 10 centimeters of the girls' dorms and must ask permission before entering anyone's room. Also, they have to announce themselves before making contact. Honestly, solid boundaries. Rule 3. Everyone in the group is equal. No rank-based hierarchy. This caused a stir. One student worried about speaking casually to Tirasu since she was a princess, but Tirasu explained that in elf culture, noble titles aren't about power. They represent responsibilities, not privileges. That blew Nero's mind, since his experience with nobles had been the exact opposite. Some of the girls weren't happy with the idea of being treated as equals to Niro, a former slave. They looked to Tarek for backup, but he calmly shut them down, saying he's never seen slaves as beneath him. Tarek explains that he doesn't judge people based on status, only strength. He's even been close friends with his slaves. Sure, he's a musclehead, but he's got more integrity than any noble Nero's dealt with. Everyone had voiced their stance except Niro, so one of the girls pushed him for his thoughts. He declared that power should define rank, and he wants to be treated like any noble, unless they can prove they're stronger. It was a proud moment for Niro, finally speaking up for himself. This interaction helps Niro realize not all nobles are the same. People like Tirasu and Tarek show that decency still exists in high places. On their way out, the group runs into another elf princess, the green-haired one, who's also in Even's team. She mocks Tirasu for having a meathead and a slave on her squad. Tirasu claps back, reminding her that Even got destroyed in the last exam. Legendary burn. Tensions rise, and after the groups part ways, one of Nero's teammates explains that the rivalry runs deep. All 3 elf princesses are vying for the throne. Tirasu's family hasn't had a queen in 7 generations, so if she fails, her bloodline could lose its royal status. No wonder she's so intense. The next day, the monocle-wearing instructor announces the second exam, a 3-on-3 battle. Only the winning teams can move on to year 2. But there's a twist. Students won't know who's on their side or who's the enemy until the match starts. Smart move. This prevents internal sabotage and politics. For their first team-building activity, students draw lots to form temporary trios. Tirasu, Niro, and the elf student end up together. The task is a coordination exercise. Walk toward a boulder with their feet tied together. It's meant to develop focus and unity. Almost immediately, the elf student slips and injures his knee. Tirasu, not one to tolerate weakness, tells him to get up and keep moving. They continue, but it's rough going. Meanwhile, Tarek's group is cruising. He's literally carrying his 2 teammates. The guy's a walking gym. Back to Tirasu's team. The elf falls again, so Tirasu starts smacking him to motivate him. Shockingly, the guy seems into it. Niro joins in, then the elf hits back, and the whole thing devolves into a mess. They fail the exercise. As they return to their dorms, Tarek rips off his shirt, revealing a body sculpted by the gods. The girls swoon. Tirasu, however, is not amused and orders him to do that kind of showboating inside the boys' room, so the boys rush off. But instead of going in, they sneak a peek at the girls' room, egged on by Tarek, of course. Tirasu catches them and immediately draws a knife, sending all 3 boys tumbling in fear. So yeah, Tarek might be strong, but he's definitely the group's designated pervert. The next day, the group, along with the monocle-wearing instructor, heads to the spirit forest for their first field exam. The instructor explains that the forest is full of dangerous spirits, and their objective is to reach a certain location while avoiding or fending off these entities. He warns Tirasu not to use her spirit communing abilities. This challenge is meant to test teamwork and survival, not shortcuts. Just before Niro enters the forest, the instructor takes his pendant, suggesting it might interfere with the spirits. That pendant is clearly hiding more than meets the eye. Inside the forest, the ground spirit launches an attack at Tirasu. She tells the orange-haired girl to cast a defensive spell, but the girl forgets the chant. Right before the blow lands, Niro throws himself in front and takes the hit. He collapses, and the girls panic, but the instructor reassures them. He cast protective spells on everyone while they slept. Sure enough, Niro regains consciousness, soaking in the attention. Terasu heals him with her magic, and they move on. At one point, Terasu mentions she's thirsty. Niro instantly scrambles to find a leaf, collects water, and offers it to her. Yep, he's full simp mode now. Suddenly, the orange-haired girl senses movement and fires a fire arrow, accidentally hitting a dragon hatchling. Terasu instantly realizes it's a green dragon's child, meaning they've provoked the wrath of the forest's guardian, the queen. And just like that, boss battle triggered. The queen appears, and the group bows in fear. Terasu pleads for forgiveness, explaining it was a mistake. The queen demands a sacrifice, the one who harmed the hatchling. Before the girl can be taken, Niro steps forward and falsely claims responsibility. His selfless act moves the queen, and she lets them go. However, when she learns that Niro is a half-elf, a race considered cursed among elves, Terasu is stunned. She exclaims in disbelief, then turns away and walks off. Afterward, while the group is still on the move, they're attacked by a water spirit. Niro tries to shield Terasu with a protective spell, but she dodges on purpose and gets hit. As he helps her up, she coldly tells him they're strangers now and wants nothing to do with him. Ouch. She's actively sabotaging now. Once the challenge ends, Tarek greets them, but the mood is heavy and no one responds. Niro heads off to meet the monocle instructor, who decides it's time for some lore drops. He explains that half-elves inherit both the peaceful essence of elves and the chaotic nature of humans. These traits enhance each other, meaning some half-elves are exceptionally kind, while others become dangerously unstable, even more so than regular humans. Because half-elves are believed to be easily consumed by darkness, Terasu's cold behavior toward Niro starts to make more sense. In the next scene, Niro, Tarek, and their third teammate are racing to the next exam, nearly late. They regroup with the girls, Terasu still clearly upset about Niro's heritage. At the exam site, the female and monocle instructors explain the upcoming test, a trial of wisdom. The groups are formed by drawing lots again. Niro ends up with Tarek and Terasu, while the elf students' chances are pretty much doomed. Inside the exam area, they find the Magsmia tree, which bears the rare all-cure fruit. Their mission is to drive off a bird called the Aragon nesting in the tree, so the Empire can harvest the fruit more easily. The catch? They can't harm the bird or the tree. They have until sunset. Terasu takes charge and tells Niro and Tarek not to act without her. She leaves to strategize. Meanwhile, the other group jumps into action. The black-haired girl fires an arrow at the bird to scare it off. It misses, strikes a fruit stem, and causes it to fall. Just as expected, the instructors arrive and disqualify the entire group for damaging the sacred fruit. Even the innocent elf student gets the boot. The instructors then reveal the exam's real purpose, weeding out soldiers who can't follow orders. Tarek assumes this means their group passed by default, but the monocle instructor clarifies, both groups can still fail. With time ticking, Tarek and Niro begin to worry. Eventually, Terasu returns with a snake, hoping to trick the Aragon into thinking its nest is in danger. Instead, the Aragon just feeds the snake to its chicks. Brutal. Running out of ideas, Terasu suggests snatching a hatchling, but the Aragon easily fends them off. In desperation, she mirrors the failed plan from the earlier group, using a bow to threaten the bird. It fails again. Defeated, she drops to her knees. That's when Niro steps in with a new plan: fight nature with nature. He proposes starting a wildfire to scare the bird, knowing fire would counter the Aragon's wind-based powers. The team works together, and though the smoke startles the bird, it's not enough, until Terasu taps into a new magic spell, boosting the flames. The fire finally drives the Aragon away. Success. The monocle instructor calls it the ideal solution. Aragons are vulnerable to fire due to their affinity with wind. In the final scene, we see Tarek and Niro saying goodbye to a tearful Jin, their elf teammate, who's now disqualified and leaving the academy. Too bad Jin had to go. He was one of the few genuinely decent characters. Soon after, Terasu returns from a bath and invites Niro into her room. Naturally, Tarek and the other guy let their imaginations run wild. Inside, Terasu offers Niro a cup of luxurious tea, so pricey that he hesitates to drink it. She then opens up about why she's been so distant. She had an uncle, also a half-elf, whom she once admired. Despite being shunned by her family, he was kind to her. He eventually fell in love with a housemaid named Adele, but their relationship was forbidden due to their social gap. Heartbroken and rejected, he was consumed by his chaotic side and went on a killing spree. So yeah, the elf society's got its own brand of cruelty. Since then, Terasu vowed never to trust anyone again, especially half-elves. Niro assures her he's not like her uncle. Just as the moment starts to get intense, she senses someone spying. Yep, it's Tarek, and fires an arrow through the window to scare him off. Mood ruined. After passing the second exam, the bald professor reassigns everyone into new groups. Disappointing, since the trio's chemistry was great. Nero's new team is full of strangers, while Terasu ends up with Anne, one of the elf princesses, and Even. Tarek is grouped with Miria. When Niro arrives at his new dorm, he finds a total mess, and naturally, the entitled brats tell him to clean it. They also name him group leader, just to avoid the responsibility themselves. Meanwhile, in Tarek's group, the others try to dump on Miria too, but Tarek shuts that down hard. As leader, he makes it clear there'll be no discrimination under his watch. King behavior from the Meathead. In Terasu's group, she volunteers to lead, but one student suggests Even instead. Even declines, leaving it to them to choose. Later that night, Even is seen stripping and using his blood magic to push his limits, some edgy training ritual apparently. Terasu walks in and stops him, warning that he could die. Even insists he'd rather die than dishonor his family. Dude's got a death wish. Next day, students gather, except Nero's group doesn't show. The bald instructor warns him that if they're late again, Niro will take the blame. To make things worse, his group keeps pushing chores onto him and treating him like a servant. For the next exercise, everyone is taken to Skiibbus Hills, lush with flora and fauna, known as the birthplace of life. Their mission? Exterminate blade rams, an invasive species disrupting the ecosystem. Whoever hunts the most wins the challenge. But these creatures are too dangerous to take on alone, so teamwork is a must. Let's be real, Nero's probably about to be left to fight solo. Since the professors wouldn't be supervising the mission, students were warned to be extra cautious. No backup was coming. And as expected, Nero's teammates ditched him immediately. He had no choice but to face the blade rams alone. Honestly, they've got less coordination than a random online squad. Despite the odds, Niro manages to take down one blade ram. While resting, another shows up. Exhausted and out of breath, he struggles in the fight and ends up getting knocked off a cliff, severely injured and unable to move. Vultures circle overhead. Things are looking grim. That's when Nerea shows up, scaring off the vultures. She rushes to help Niro, only to fall and hurt herself too. Still, she manages to heal him, surprising him since even the professors haven't used healing magic yet. She explains she learned it on her own while tending to a wounded friend in the past. Turns out, Nerea might be even more gifted than anyone realized. When Niro tries healing himself, it doesn't work. Nerea suspects it might be a unique ability she was born with. Niro then asks why she continues to help others despite being mistreated. Her answer? She ignores the cruelty and focuses on her goals. Niro disagrees. He wants to overcome those wrongs, not pretend they don't exist. A quiet moment of clashing ideologies. They meditate together to regain mana, and once recovered, Niro decides to carve his own path, literally and metaphorically, choosing to dig a way out rather than wait for rescue. Real growth moment for him. They eventually climb back up and are spotted by a guard who escorts them back to camp. At the results tally, the average group had killed 3 blade rams, but Terasu's group bagged 5 and took the win. Nero's team whined that they didn't win because they were short a member. Classic excuse. But when Niro and Nere arrived with 2 more rams, the guard confirmed they were Nero's kills, stunning everyone. His group tried to claim victory, but Niro, in a boss move, gives the credit to Nerea's team since she saved his life. Naturally, his teammates are furious, but Niro shuts them down. Finally standing his ground, love to see it. Meanwhile, a quiet scene hints that Even might be developing feelings for Terasu. Elsewhere, Tarek and Nerea go on a hike together. When she twists her ankle, Tarek carries her without hesitation. Back at the academy, Nero is seen trying to slice through a tree in one strike. He takes a moment to commune with it first. He's clearly grinding hard. Fast forward 9 months. The students gather before a large gate. The bald professor announces the third test, a trial of endurance. The objective? Survive for 2 months. Food supplies won't last even one, so students will have to forage. The testing ground includes a tree, wild hogs, and edible mushrooms mixed with poisonous ones. Endurance happens to be one of Nero's strong suits, but that doesn't make this 2-month survival exam any easier. 2 weeks in, one of his groupmates manages to kill a hog and eats the meat. By the next day, it's rotten. He tries to eat it anyway, gets violently sick, and is disqualified. Another genius tries a random mushroom, same result. One more nearly gets trampled by the hog and has to be saved by the monocle instructor, which also leads to his elimination. No love lost there. After hearing about their disqualifications, Niro decides it's time to act. He first tries to communicate with the hog, but it's trained to ignore students. Then he notices the hog eating mushrooms and realizes it must know which are safe. When he tries to get closer, the hog charges and chases him up a tree. Classic. Meanwhile, the monocle instructor notes that this test reveals the student's true nature under pressure, and he's not wrong. Evan uses sheer magical power to force the hog into obedience. Tarasu charms it with kindness. Niro, passed out from hunger, gets food from the hog out of pity. Tarek, of course, wrestles the hog into mutual respect. Two meatheads, one epic showdown. Niro, he goes full rodeo, literally riding the hog non-stop until it tires out. He then offers it his crackers. Day after day, he repeats this, slowly earning its trust. Eventually, they share the crackers, forming a bond. Niro proposes they survive together, and the hog agrees. This sets up a perfect contrast. Evan dominates through force, while Niro thrives through cooperation. Polar opposites. No wonder they clash. A month later, the test ends, and Niro passes. The headmistress congratulates everyone, and like clockwork, new 5-person teams are formed. Tarasu, Evan, and Miro end up in the same group. Classic trio energy, brains, edge, and chaos. Tarasu becomes the leader again. During the regrouping, Niro gets called to her new team and bumps into Niro. She's noticeably thinner, finally getting her glow up after nearly starving during the endurance trial. They exchange greetings and head to their teams. True to form, Tarasu immediately lays down dorm rules. No boys near her room, period. On the way back, Niro crosses paths with Evan, who's already annoyed about being grouped with Miro. Dude just stays mad. Later, the bald professor greets Miro and Tarasu, which shocks Evan. He's furious that the professor acknowledged a slave before him. Right after, the professor announces the next test, a physical challenge. Looks like Miro's finally going to have her moment to shine. The first exercise was a strength challenge, throwing a heavy ball attached to a chain. The gray-haired noble went first, followed by Tarasu, who outperformed him. Another noble mocked him for losing to her, but his own throw didn't go any farther. Evan stepped up and managed to beat Tarasu's distance, but then Niro threw, and his went even farther than Evan's, which left Evan a little salty. Next up was a foot race. Tarasu easily dominated with her elven speed, leaving Evan and Niro to battle for second place. Niro was in the lead until the final stretch, but Evan, powered by pure spite, surged ahead to snatch second place at the last second. Salty speed boost unlocked. After the race, Tarasu offered Niro a sip from her water pouch. He jokingly asked her to drink first, referencing when he gave her water during their first year. They both laughed, an unusual sight that surprised Evan. Seeing Tarasu laugh and relax with Niro clearly rubbed him the wrong way. Later, while Evan was carving wood, he noticed Niro and Tarasu sharing tea and casual conversation. He never imagined Tarasu being that comfortable with anyone. Jealousy flared. Evan was down bad. That afternoon, the monocle professor gathered Tarasu's group for a new lesson, large-scale magic attacks. Unlike single-target spells, these require an enormous amount of mana to pull off. Challenging stuff for most students, but not the main character, right? The professor also explained the 3 main jobs in their world. Black Knight, built for raw power. Black Mage, suited for large mana reserves. Archer, best for sharp-minded folks like elves. There are also rare hybrid jobs like Magic Swordsman, which blends strength and magic. Emperor Mugen himself is a magic swordsman, though the role demands extraordinary talent. Then came the demonstration. The professor used a spell called Arufiona, a large-scale attack designed to wipe out multiple enemies at once. Students took turns trying it. The black-haired noble failed. Tarasu did a decent job, but Niro? He flopped. Worse than the noble. Unexpected, to say the least. Niro was stunned. He'd always excelled at magic. The professor explained it might be an issue with his hearts, the internal cores that regulate mana flow. Finally, Evan took his turn. Fueled by fury and pride, he pulled off the spell with full force. He then proudly declared his ambition to become a magic swordsman, just like the Emperor. This feels like Sasuke and Naruto clashing again for the Hokage title. Struggling with his magic, Niro throws himself into non-stop training, trying to master Arufiona, but it keeps failing. Watching silently from behind a tree is Tarasu, offering quiet moral support. 4 months later, the bald professor leads the students to a valley known for bloodshed, as it holds Onmaru, a precious magical ore. Normally guarded, it's empty for the day, so the academy uses it for training. The test? Find the hidden mine entrance. Only one person from each group will earn a piece of equipment. Before the professor even finishes explaining, the students rush ahead. After taking down a few golem monsters, everyone splits up. Tarasu keeps wiping out any golems she sees until she spots a large group of them in a field, only for actual monsters to show up and slaughter the golems. Cut to Niro, mid-fight with a golem, when a man bursts from the bushes yelling at him to run. Niro's unsure if this is part of the test, until the man is killed by real monsters. Evan also encounters monsters and quickly realizes things have gone off script. He hears a scream. Too bad the professor is snoozing behind a waterfall, completely unaware. Niro hears the scream too, Tarasu's. She's fighting hard with her bow but is clearly outnumbered. Once she runs out of arrows and mana, she's helpless. The monsters close in, but Niro arrives just in time, saving her. He tries a Rufiona again. No luck. His magic's on holiday. As the monsters keep coming, Evan jumps in, firing magic missiles and evening the odds. With the three of them together, they manage to push back. Suddenly, the monster leader recognizes them. He remembers fighting 3 heroes just like them decades ago. But this trio? Way weaker. He orders his forces to attack. Niro says he'll take the boss while Tarasu and Evan handle the rest, since Evan's the only one who can launch major attacks right now. But Evan, ever the proud noble, refuses to follow Niro's lead. Niro charges at the monster leader anyway, but it doesn't go well. The monster mocks his sword skills before easily beating him down. Evan gives it a shot next and holds out longer, but he too gets knocked back, flying into Tarasu. Luckily, he shields the blow with his mana. Still, with Tarasu and Evan both out of mana, Niro's their last shot. He keeps taking out weaker enemies but still can't activate a Rufiona, even though he feels a surge of magic inside him. Eventually, the monsters land a heavy hit on him. Tarasu tries to help, but Niro stops her and tells her to run. Cut to Niro, lost in thought, having his power-up moment. He finally unleashes a massive blast of magic that wipes out all the surrounding enemies, then collapses. The monster leader, furious, tries to finish Niro off, but the monocle-wearing professor shows up and slays him, muttering that he's not the final boss. Nope, that title belongs to the busty headmistress, who shows up and one-shots the leader. Game over. The other professors and guards sweep in to clean up the remaining monsters. Later, Niro's lying in a cart, being healed by the elf professor. Tarasu notices he's not wearing a uniform, and when she sees the pendant around his neck, she's shocked. Looks like we're finally about to learn its significance. Back at the academy, the headmistress holds an award ceremony for Niro, Evan, and Tarasu. The crowd cheers loudly for Evan and Tarasu, but at first, only Tarek and Naria cheer for Niro, until the rest join in. For the first time, nobles are giving Niro the recognition he deserves. Things are finally turning around. The bald professor tells them they'll each get 10 bonus points, though not until their 7th year, and gifts them all an artifact. Niro thanks Evan for his help, but Evan coolly says he was just testing his strength. They go their separate ways, but a professor suddenly teleports beside Evan with a message. The headmistress wants to hand him the answer sheet for the last exam, just when Evan was starting to grow on us. Later, Niro's black-haired teammate informs the group about the 4th exam, an intelligence test. They must memorize a history book within 1 month, completely solo. No study groups or help allowed. They can start studying in the Great Library tomorrow. Confident, Niro figures this will be easy. He's been reading since he was a kid. What could go wrong? As he and Tarasu walk through the hallway, she suddenly asks if he's read about the elven family. He admits he hasn't. He never had any books on elves. Tarasu brushes off Niro's question, but it's obvious she's hiding something. A study montage follows, including a moment where Niro is confused by his history textbook. A month later, exam results come in. Only 2 students fail. Ralph, who scores a 69, nice, and Niro, who barely scrapes a 14. That's shady. Because he failed, Niro is sent back home, escorted by 2 slaves. On the road, one of them, Sargit, questions Niro's calm demeanor, then beats him. Sargit reveals the Reedus family gave them permission to treat Niro as a slave. His family now belongs to them. So much for noble honor. At home, Niro is reunited with Wendy and Sylvie, but the moment is cut short when a butler summons him. Inside, the master hurls a bottle at him, furious that Niro addressed Evan informally at school. Niro explains they were told to act that way, but the master dismisses it, saying slaves shouldn't talk back. As punishment, he announces he'll sell Niro's sisters. And not just to anyone, to Harvey, the man who murdered Niro's parents. Horrified, Niro begs the master to kill him instead, but is refused. Desperate, Niro goes straight to Harvey and offers himself in place of his sisters. Harvey agrees, saying male slaves are cheaper to maintain and more profitable. At Harvey's estate, Niro is immediately put to hard labor with almost no rest. The author really isn't giving this guy a break. One night, Harvey, angry over a financial loss, drags Niro out and whips him savagely. Then, just to twist the knife, Harvey admits he poisoned Niro's father and tortured his mother to death. Enraged, Niro grabs a broken floorboard to stab him, but stops, fearing for his sister's safety. Back at the academy, Tarasu overhears Evan talking suspiciously about Niro. She sends a spirit to follow Evan's lackeys and discovers Evan gave Niro a fake history book and told his men to destroy the real one. Thankfully, the spirit manages to save the original just in time. Meanwhile, the monocle professor interrogates the henchman. It's confirmed. The black-haired noble sabotaged Niro's exam with a forged textbook. The monocle-wearing professor threatens Evan's henchmen with execution unless they confess who ordered the fake history book. Pressured, they reveal it was Evan. No surprise, Evan's confirmed to be complete trash. Enraged, Tarasu tracks him down and spots him meeting with the headmistress. Inside, it's revealed they had a deal. Since Evan held up his end, the headmistress offers herself as a reward. Yeah, she literally tries to sleep with him. Evan, however, declines, saying he likes someone else. Tarasu. She overhears everything and is completely stunned. Meanwhile, Harvey continues torturing Niro, who's completely broken at this point. Just before another whipping, Professor Olnu appears and stops Harvey. He announces that Niro is now a fourth-year student at Excanum Academy, which gives him a higher status than a commoner. That means Harvey just assaulted someone above him in rank. Niro, regaining some spirit, asks what the punishment is for such a crime. Olnu confirms it's serious, so Niro grabs a bat to dish out justice. Just as he's about to strike, Harvey pulls a knife, but Olnu restrains him with magic. Right before Niro can finish him off, he collapses from hunger. After waking and eating, Niro's strength returns, and he readies himself for payback. Harvey begs for mercy, but Niro isn't swayed. Harvey never spared his mother. Still, Niro remembers Tarasu's story about her uncle losing himself to chaos after giving in to rage. Afraid of following that path, Niro walks away. Harvey mocks him for it, but not for long. Olnu kills Harvey on the spot. Legend. On the way back to the academy, Olnu tells Niro that Evan was behind everything. Sadly, thanks to his powerful connections, Evan will face no real consequences. Typical. At the academy's graduation ceremony, the headmistress congratulates the 16 new Empire officers, meaning Niro is no longer a slave. They'll continue 4 more years of study. No more eliminations, though. When she notices only 15 students present, her assistant explains Marcus was disqualified, and Niro is taking his place. Evan is stunned to see Niro back. Turek, Tirasu, and Nerea are relieved, teams finally whole again. Now official Empire officers, the 16 students don new uniforms. Turek shoots a glance at Nerea, but she's only looking for Niro. Oof. Niro greets her, but she's too flustered to respond. Tarasu then pulls Niro aside for a private chat. She reveals a bombshell. Niro is a half-elf from the royal Hilla family. More specifically, he's the son of Queen Lunadel. Yep, royalty. A pendant like his is rare, owned only by select few. There's also an old rumor that Queen Lunadel had a secret child with the legendary sage Kundan, one that was hidden and eventually abandoned. Putting 2 and 2 together, Niro realizes that might be him, which would make Evan his brother. Plot twist. Later, the bald professor announces the students will each have their own room now. Niro, walking into his, feels a sense of pride, no more scrubbing floors. Meanwhile, Tarasu passes Evan in the hall. His room is next to hers, and he tries to talk to her. She shuts him down hard, saying he should have been expelled for what he did. Still, as she walks off, she recalls him confessing feelings for her to the headmistress. Cut to the bathhouse. Nero's soaking when Evan walks in. Evan congratulates him on no longer being a slave, but Niro snaps, asking why he tried to sell his sisters to the man who killed their mother. Evan insists he only reported Nero's situation to the Regis family, denying involvement. But Niro isn't buying it. He warns Evan that if given the chance, he'll kill him. Guess sibling rivalry runs deep. That evening, outside Nero's room, Nerea shows up. Her room's next to his. Niro congratulates her for acing the knowledge test and asks if she can help him study history. She agrees, offering to teach him after dinner each day. Smooth move, Niro. The next day, Nerea begins her lessons, starting with the history of the Mu Empire. It was originally 3 kingdoms: Laurentia, land of knights; Aruka, land of mages; and Noria, land of elves. This alliance lasted 842 years, until the seers of Noria predicted the rise of the demon lord Secneum. To counter the threat, the 3 kingdoms created the Excanum Academy. Secneum had terrified the empire, and while the prophecy didn't come true for centuries, doubt eventually grew, and so did the monsters. Luckily, the academy had already trained powerful warriors, including the Shy, now Emperor Muren, who wielded the legendary sword Arcane, along with 4 others: Tarek's father, the black mag Gangan, the brilliant mages Estramus and Kundin, and Queen Lunadel. A long war followed, with the 4 heroes fighting Secneum's monstrous forces. During the chaos, Estramus made a grim discovery: sacrifice was needed. As monsters gathered on a hill, claiming Secneum's return was near, the 5 heroes tried to stop it but failed. In desperation, Estramus and Kundin used their own blood to summon the Divine Lord. Secneum, revealed to be a stunning woman, struck at the Divine Lord, but it didn't work. Emperor Muren then apologized, thanked the Divine, and sliced through him. The blow harmed Secneum too, revealing that she and the Divine Lord Lugurd were 2 halves of the same being. With this link exposed, the heroes finally killed her. Her body was split into 3 powerful fragments, scattered across the world. Drawn to one another, they threatened to reunite and revive her. To prevent this, the heroes used ancient relics, the Eyes of Lugurd, to seal the pieces. Only 2 eyes remained. The third was lost along with its guardians, who might have just gone out for milk and vanished. One fragment was sealed in Noria, another in Aruka. The third was left unsealed. When that final piece started drifting toward the others, the heroes sprang into action. They decided to seal it inside a powerful, mana-rich body. Kundin volunteered. Lunadel, clearly in love with him, was distraught, especially since she, Kundin, and Estramus were tangled in a love triangle. Still, Kundin carried out the plan, but when he absorbed the fragment, he was possessed by Secneum's spirit and attacked the others. Estramus shielded them, losing an arm in the process, but he had a backup plan. While Kundin fought Emperor Muren, Estramus snuck behind and cast a final spell that sealed both the demon and Kundin at the cost of his own life. Lunadel lost both of her loves that day, but with the sacrifices of the 2 genius mages, the 3rd fragment was finally sealed. As Miria finishes the story, Miro starts crying, finally grasping the weight of the sacrifices made. The scene shifts to Evan speaking with the headmistress. He offers her his blood, the bloodline of past heroes, in exchange for more power. She's literally thirsting for it. Surprised, she asks why he seeks strength when he's already ahead of everyone else. Evan recalls his meeting with Miro and admits he's nowhere near strong enough. Meanwhile, a spirit silently observes. After Evan leaves, Tarasu confronts him, accusing him of plotting something and asking why he wants to hurt Miro. Evan coldly calls Miro a slave, triggering Tarasu. She tries to hit him, but he blocks her and fires back, accusing her of hypocrisy, saying even Noria has its own class divide. Tarasu insists Noria's nobles respect their duty and don't look down on the lower class. Suddenly, Evan hugs her and confesses the truth. He fears Miro. Back in the halls, Miro walks by 3 students who insult him. This time, he doesn't hold back and beats them up. He's furious. These are the same people his father died protecting. Later, he tells Tarasu his goal, to become a shy and bring his father back. When Evan later asks Tarasu for advice, she calls him out, saying he's a pampered brat compared to Miro, who's suffered all his life. In the cafeteria, the students eat without a care, but Miro snaps and storms out. Outside, he vents by slashing down a tree, angry that the world his father died for is filled with selfish, rotten people. He decides it's time to change the system. Meanwhile, Nerea is in her room, wrapping an almond to give to Miro, a token of affection, like Valentine's chocolate. But later, Miro is seen roughing up another student, clearly enraged. Tarek steps in, telling him to stop. Turns out, the student had insulted Miro first, and when the boy threatens to tell his father, Miro warns that if he becomes shy, he won't forget. Tarek tries to pull Miro back, but Miro claims they're no different from the bullies. That hits too hard. Nerea and Tarasu witness this scene, and Nerea quietly puts the almond gift away. Sitting on the stairs, Miro tells Tarasu about his dream of becoming shy, not just for power, but to fix a broken world where people are treated like garbage, just like his own family was. Unseen, Evan secretly listens in from nearby. What a sneaky bastard. At last, Nerea manages to give Miro the almond she prepared, a clear sign of her feelings, but Miro turns her down. Harsh. Later, Tarasu hands Miro a bunch of almonds too, and this time, Miro accepts. They kiss, and guess who's watching? Evan. Man just got emotionally drop-kicked. He storms back to his room in a fit. Turns out Tarek also planned to give Nerea almonds, but backed out. Meanwhile, Nerea is in tears in her room. The drama is unreal. The next day, the bald professor calls all the 4th years for a swordsmanship test. This time, their goal is to land a hit, disarm him, or knock him down. Students try and fail. Even Tarek and Evan step in, only to get clowned and tossed aside. Then Miro joins. He impresses everyone by splitting the professor's sword clean in half, disarming him. Total domination. Niro then gloats, rubbing it in the others' faces. Evan can't handle it and snaps. He unleashes magic despite the test being sword only. The professor tries to intervene, but gets tangled in Evan's spell. Evan lashes out at Niro, who dodges every strike. Tarek jumps in to stop Evan, but gets knocked out cold by his magic. Evan warns the rest to stay out of it, while Niro grabs his sword and prepares for battle. The two go head-to-head, with Evan casting a strange spell. Apparently, his real motive is petty jealousy. He's pissed Niro kissed Tarasso. The fight escalates until the headmistress shows up and wipes them both out instantly with her magic. Just like that, KO'd. A week later, Evan and Niro, formerly Niro, cross paths but ignore each other. Tarek tells Niro that next time he gets into a fight, he's out, expelled for good. He only got a pass this time because Evan threw the first punch. Then, Tarek smacks Niro out of frustration. Nerea had taken care of him after the battle, but Niro coldly told her to stay away. Brutal. Tarek's had enough. He hits Niro again when Niro keeps running his mouth. But Niro doesn't hit back. Before leaving, Tarek tells him he never saw Niro or Nerea as beneath him. Niro reflects on how chaotic he's become and hopes Nerea stays away from that version of him. Soon after, Niro and two other students are seen racing toward a towering structure where they meet none other than Emperor Muren. The students show respect, bowing formally. The Emperor congratulates them on their progress, gives a short pep talk, and breaks the news. Secneum's forces are becoming more active. Once they finish their exams, they'll be heading straight to the front lines. Time to prepare. After finishing his speech, the speaker exits, leaving the students uneasy. War is coming, and with it, chaos. On the bright side, that means more action and less drama. We shift to Niro, walking the halls and recalling the day the Emperor saved him in the mines and gave him his sword. He enters the Emperor's chamber, where he's warmly congratulated for rising to elite soldier status and for defeating the monster army at Onuru Mine. But the mood shifts when the Emperor brings up Niro's clash with Even and his growing resentment toward nobles. Niro apologizes, and the Emperor, hinting at a shared past, tells him to train his heart like he trains his blade. Later, Myron asks Niro if he's ready to train in magic swordsmanship. Are we entering a training arc now? Cut to Even, getting scorched by Myron's flame magic. Suspicious? Turns out Myron's training in Even too, but with opposite advice. Instead of controlling his rage like Niro, Even's told to harness it. Myron's playing both sides. Meanwhile, Tarasu daydreams about Niro's kiss and Even's hug. She's not picking sides either. 3 months later, the bald professor and his colleagues announce the next exam, the test of mercy. Students will team up in pairs, battling enemies along a path to earn points. Killing others is allowed, but it comes with a penalty, lower total points. Naturally, the students are stunned. Total battle royale energy. As groups form, Nerea becomes the most requested partner. Everyone wants to team with the weakest to avoid being targeted. Just then, Tarasu's spirit asks to team up with her, and Nerea accepts. Turek, seeing through everyone's intentions, gets frustrated. No one wants to pair with him. Meanwhile, Niro and Even have already teamed up. Tarasu recalls giving both of them personal advice, and Nerea remembers when Niro opened up about why he couldn't support her. She breaks down in tears. Niro, touched, remembers the shoes she made him. Back to the present, Niro and Even head into the forest. Turek, paired with a nervous black-haired student, reassures him he won't hurt him. They spot a rabbit. Turek insists the test's true purpose is to show mercy to innocent creatures. But then, the rabbit mutates and devours a raccoon. Time to kill it, with fire. Our main characters see it too. Tarasu swiftly slays the rabbit, revealing the true purpose of the test of mercy, judging when to show compassion and when not to. Meanwhile, Niro and Even draw their swords, but instead of fighting the monster, they turn on each other. Watching from a distance is Professor Olmu, observing their clash. Back with Tarasu and Nerea, Tarasu casually asks why Nerea likes Niro. Nerea admits she's already let go. He has feelings for someone else, Tarasu. But Tarasu says Niro used to like her, past tense. Flashback time. Niro once told Tarasu his feelings were rooted in responsibility, like how he feels about his twin sisters. Oof, sister-zoned. Niro had admired Tarasu not romantically, but because she represented the kind of person he wished to be. Eventually, he chose to stop chasing that change, and they agreed to hold back on their feelings. As Tarasu shares this, Nerea quietly weeps, wanting to be there for Niro more than anything. Back to the battlefield. Even gains the upper hand and wounds Niro, leading to some heated trash talk. Cut again to the girls. Tarasu comes to understand that Nerea's love for Niro is nurturing, maternal even, while hers is more about admiration. Still, she tells Nerea their feelings aren't so different. Niro and Even continue trading blows evenly. Niro taps into techniques taught by the Emperor. Even does the same. Their swords clash, and it hits them. They had the same mentor. This sends Even into a rage, overpowering Niro briefly, but Niro counters, disarms him, and throws in some trash talk. Even snaps, accusing Niro of stealing everything from him, then unleashes a monstrous spell. Still doesn't work. Niro takes him down again. Now Even taps into a darker, more corrupt magic, something that mirrors Secneum's power. At that moment, Candon, the one sealed with the third piece, opens his eyes. Niro, recognizing the power, realizes Even's using the same dark energy. Even mocks him, but Niro strikes, severing Even's arm and stabbing him through the heart. Even with all his upgrades, he's still no match. Lamal. Elsewhere, Tirasu finishes off a monster and asks Nerea if she believes she can close the emotional gap Nero's created between himself and the rest. Then, back to the fight. Even surrenders, bitter and defeated, claiming Niro always takes everything from him. Niro calmly tells him they should have just talked things out. Then he drops the bombshell. They're half-brothers. Even stunned, but Niro proves it by showing him a pendant. He explains that he was abandoned and raised by slaves, revealing the truth of his origins. We flash back to the past, where Lunadel and Kundin part ways to protect their respective homelands. Sadly, Kundin is also bound to a political marriage. He tries to get Lunadel to stay with him, but she refuses. Classic case of duty over desire. So Kundin goes ahead with the marriage, to Even's mother. When war breaks out, Kundin heads to the front despite his wife's protests. There, he's injured in a monster battle. Lunadel rushes to his side at the war camp, where Astromus is tending to him but can't fully heal him. Lunadel steps in to heal Kundin herself, even though it'll shorten her own life. Astromus objects, but she does it anyway. She's built different. Kundin wakes up to find Lunadel by his side, and they share a tearful reunion. Later, he returns home. His wife greets him warmly, but he brushes her off and reveals the truth. He loves Lunadel, who's now carrying his child. Even's mom is heartbroken. Kundin tells her to forget him entirely, like he's already dead. Before leaving, he names their unborn son Even. Yup, he really did go out for milk. A few months later, the war ends. By then, Kundin is presumed sealed. Rumors swirl about his child with Lunadel, but the gossip dies down quickly. Fast forward to the coronation of Muren as the new Shah and Emperor, watched by kingdoms across the land, including Valencia, Noria, and Aruca. After the ceremony, Muren meets with Lunadel and asks if the rumor about the child is true. She confirms it. They both worry that if the truth gets out, the child will be dragged into the battle for the throne. Muren promises to bury the rumors. We then see the moment Even is born, and Niro is adopted by a pair of slaves. Back in the present, Even is livid. He now believes Niro is the reason their father abandoned him and his mother. He lashes out, determined to kill Niro, but Niro refuses to go all in. Even, now armed with yet another power-up, seriously, this guy is stacking buffs, starts overpowering Niro again. Meanwhile, Tarek and the black-haired student finish off waves of monsters. They notice some were strangely docile, others overly aggressive. Oops, they may have wiped out the innocent ones too. Back to Niro and Even. Niro finally gives in, exhausted. Even has the chance to end it, but after a rapid-fire flashback of their days at the academy, he hesitates. He realizes they're not so different. Cue power of friendship. Just then, the seals containing Kundin begin to crack. Turns out this was all part of Emperor Muren's plan, as revealed by Headmistress Hedea. After the exam ends, the professor announces the group scores. Tarek's team, a solid 0. They murdered everything. Some students earned positive scores, but Tarasso ended up with -4 for likely killing an innocent creature. Niro and Even scored even lower with -5. Surprisingly, Nerea, who was in Tarasso's group but didn't kill anything, scored a solid 7 and is now the front runner for Shah. Everyone's shocked. She completely outshone the others. After the 5th exam, the headmistress greets the students in the hallway and congratulates them. She announces that they'll be heading to the front lines next week, per the Emperor's orders. But first, there'll be a banquet in Aruca. Each student needs a dance partner for the event, and they'll be spending 5 days together. Yep, it's turning into a school romance drama. Later in the cafeteria, students are trying to find dance partners. Even sits with Niro, not to hang out, but to ask if it's okay to invite Tarasu, now that she and Niro aren't as close. Before Niro can respond, Even just goes for it. Tarasu says yes. Even then, casually returns to Niro's table. The next day, the bald professor briefs the students on their trip to Aruca. Each dance pair is assigned a royal carriage. Niro watches as Turek and Miria, along with Tarasu and Even, board their carriages. Niro gets in with his own partner. She's reading and makes it clear she doesn't want to talk. Fair enough. Meanwhile, Turek and Miria bond over childhood stories. Tarasu and Even get into deeper territory. She asks why he's so close to the headmistress. Even admits he's struggled with being compared to his father and feeling inferior to Niro. That led him to accept the headmistress's offer, power, in exchange for blood, giving him the ability called Secneum. At first, it scared him. Now he's embraced it. As the journey goes on, everyone starts to grow closer, except Niro, who's bored stiff. When they stop to rest at an inn, Niro notices how much closer Turek and Miria and Tarasu and Even have become. It stings, though he doesn't quite understand why. It's his first taste of heartbreak. The journey resumes the next day. Tarasu finds a violin in the carriage and asks Even to play. He does. Meanwhile, Turek and Miria keep talking. This time, Miria opens up more. Niro, stuck in his carriage, is still failing to connect with his partner. The next scene shows the students boarding a boat. Niro sees Tarasu and Even growing closer, and the jealousy hits hard. He steps away from his reserved partner to lie down, but then spots Miria comforting a seasick Turek. More jealousy. Once they reach Aruka, Niro is in his room when a butler brings him his banquet outfit. At the banquet, Niro is approached by two nobles who seem interested. Until they learn he's a former slave, they quickly back off. Ouch. Then he sees Tarasu looking stunning and is clearly captivated, but Even shows up all friendly. Maybe they're cool now? Then Even starts dancing with Tarasu, and to top it off, Nerea is dancing with Turek. Jealousy overload. Seeing Turek and Miria dancing closely stings even more. It makes Nero realize he might have feelings for Nerea too. Overwhelmed, he notices the alcohol and remembers how his father used to drink to numb his feelings. So Nero downs drink after drink. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, Professor Olnu impresses the elf professor with his dancing. But mid-dance, he snaps back to serious mode, noticing the headmistress is missing from the limelight. He follows her and overhears her whispering about the students and war with a shady figure. He tries to get closer but ends up getting spotted. She launches a fireball at him. Thankfully, he teleports out just in time. Back at the banquet, a drunk Nero starts asking random people to dance. As he's about to collapse, Tarasu catches him and helps him up. Even steps in and takes Nero to his room, saying it's his responsibility as his brother. Even slowly warming up. Out on the balcony, Turek and Nerea almost kiss, but she pulls back. She still has feelings for Nero. This story is more dramatic than Wattpad. Meanwhile, a very drunk Nero mumbles that he likes someone. Even thinks it's about him, but quickly learns Nero meant Nerea. The next morning, Nero wakes up hungover and cringes at the flashbacks. He finds a note, probably from Even, saying if he ever has to drag him back again, he'll kill him. Classic Even. Elsewhere, Olnu reviews a list of students marked as potential threats. Realizing they're being separated, he burns the list and creates a new one. He's officially rebelling against the headmistress now. Honestly, Olnu might be the real protagonist here. Later, the students gather in the hall. Nero and two others show up late and get chewed out by the vice principal. The vice principal announces that the students will be sent to Aruka and Noriev to face off against Secnew's forces. This will be their 6th exam, the test of authority. Everyone's stunned, even Olnu. The students are split into 2 groups of 8. Group A goes to Aruka, Group B to Noriev. Unfortunately for us, only Turek lands in Group A. Everyone else important, including Nero, Tarasu, Nerea, and Even, ends up in Group B. Before they depart, Olnu quietly warns Turek to survive, practically slapping a death flag on him. The students say their goodbyes. Nerea gives Turek a bracelet she made, and Tarasu bids farewell to the green-haired elf princess. With that, both groups set out. We shift to a military camp where soldiers are preparing to repel Secnew's forces. The professors are updated. Apparently, the enemy knew about their plans. There's an imposter among us. The bald professor, Gerard, announces that the army will be co-led by students and professors. Olnu splits them into squads. Nero and Nerea lead the first, Tarasu, and even the second, and the remaining 4 students take the third. The students hesitate, clearly overwhelmed, so Gerard gives them a tough love lecture about the seriousness of war. Each student heads off to meet their squad. When Nero and Nerea arrive at theirs, the soldiers ask who's in charge. Nerea shoves Nero forward, too shy to speak. Cue a flashback montage of Nero's journey to becoming a soldier. He then gives a motivational speech that actually works. Morale rises. The army plans to move in 3 hours. Once the others are gone, Nero confronts Olnu, asking why they're not helping the slaves being attacked by 100 monsters. Olnu says that saving the Lord takes priority. They need his supplies more than 500 slaves. Nero's angry but powerless. Orders are orders. Meanwhile, inside a besieged castle, the Lord and his nobles are panicking. They demand to see Kara, a powerful officer, but she left 10 days ago to help the slaves. Not great news for the nobles, but a promising ally for the main cast. Elsewhere, Kara, who turns out to be a priestess, is holding a magical barrier that's protected the slaves for a whole week. MVP move. The enemy leader guesses the barrier must be weakening and sends a minion to test it. He's right, the barrier's fading, but still burns the minion's hand. So, the enemy orders his forces to bombard it with whatever they can find. Inside the barrier, a soldier tells Kara that reinforcements are on the way, but Kara knows they're likely meant for the nobles and her adoptive father, the Lord, not for the slaves. Exhausted, she admits she can't hold on much longer. Just then, the monster leader launches an attack and shatters the barrier. As he's about to finish her off, distant sounds of battle interrupt him. Enter Niro, charging in like a true main character. His squad follows close behind, joining the fray. When a soldier is knocked down, Niro instantly heals him, healer mode activated. Inspired by their leadership, the soldiers rally. Back at the main camp, the bald professor tries to call for Niro's group, but there's no answer. Total group chat ghosting vibes. Someone finally mentions they went to help the slaves. Olnu realizes that Niro's defiance could cost him everything, but at least he's standing by his beliefs. Kara wakes up to find herself still alive and sees Niro dueling the monster leader. Meanwhile, the castle is under siege. Though reinforcements are on the way, they're smaller than expected due to Niro's absence. Still, the main army pushes through the monster hordes and reaches the castle's outer wall, though the monsters breach the inner areas where the nobles and the lord are hiding. Back with Niro, things take a bad turn. He's caught by the neck. Though he stabbed the monster through the chest, it regenerates. While the monster mocks him, Niro casts a spell and blows it up. The soldiers charge in harder, and Kara thanks him for protecting the slaves. Could be a new ship. The slaves thank Niro, but instead of basking in the praise, he urges them to fight for themselves. He reveals that he was once a slave too. Inspired, the slaves take up arms, even though it's forbidden. Niro just recruited 500 fighters. Meanwhile, the main army is getting overwhelmed. The professors are burning out fast. Just when all hope seems lost, battle cries echo in the distance. Niro, his squad, and the freed slaves arrive as reinforcements after taking down all 100 monsters. Main character energy confirmed. Niro tells the slaves to arm themselves with whatever they can find. Then he meets Olnu, who slaps and scolds him for going against orders. Still, with the battle raging on, they quickly form a new plan. As the monster captains arrive, Olnu buffs Niro and Even, assigning them the mission of rescuing the noble and his son. I wish my team was as dependable as Olmu. During the fight, a voice echoed in everyone's mind. Turns out it was Kara, the priest, using sacred magic. She told them to imagine the divine Lord Lugard on the count of 3. When they did, they were blessed with a powerful buff that made wiping out the monsters a breeze. Talk about top-tier support. Meanwhile, Niro and Avin slipped past the monster horde with an invisibility spell. Inside the castle, they ran into the main boss, who had the Lord magically pinned by the neck and smugly declared they were too late. Not that it mattered, the Lord was useless anyway. Back outside, Chera gathered the wounded and began healing them with magic. She managed to patch up a lot, but eventually ran out of mana. Naria noticed and asked how to cast the spell. Power-up unlocked. Cut back to Niro and Avin. Avin gets grabbed by the neck, and the boss gloats that he's invincible thanks to the power of Secneum. But surprise, a blue trident pierces him from behind. Avin had Secneum too. That gave Niro the opening to behead the leader. Classic bras who slay together moment. At the same time, Nerea tried casting the same healing spell. Driven by her genuine desire to help, her plea reached the Divine Lord, and she successfully healed all the injured on the battlefield. She's totally OP. With that, the fight was won and the team celebrated. After the battle, Kara was crowned ruler of the region, since the old lord had died in the last war. She immediately passed reforms. Slaves could now bear arms, learn, and join the military. So yeah, losing the old lord was a win. Kara thanked Niro and Nerea for saving them when no one else did. Olmu, watching this, remembered how the Emperor Muren, also once a slave, forced people to bow. But Niro, another slave, inspired them to rise. Makes sense the story's called Slave B, Muren's Slave A. The first scene flashes to Niro being pulled by tentacles while reaching for Nerea, a scene that screams hentai, but it hasn't actually happened yet. That's a future event. 1 week earlier, the professors had gathered to strategize. They split the students into 3 teams, each sent to a key location, like a MOBA setup. On the way, Niro recalled when Olmu saved him. Olmu warned him not to do it again or risk execution. or worse, re-enslavement. Nero was torn between doing what's right or just following orders. Nerea noticed his inner struggle and looked concerned. Still, Nerea remains best girl, no contest. Once they reached their destination, the bald professor led the charge against the monsters. Nero had an easy time since the monsters were already worn out from fighting the soldiers. Suddenly, he heard a scream. Nerea was about to be struck down by one of them. Nero jumped in just in time, slaying the creature before it landed a blow. He told Nerea to stay close and not wander off. Yikes, looks like Turek's getting sidelined too. After a long day, they wiped out all the monsters and were welcomed into the castle by the soldiers. But Jorah questioned why the monsters gave the soldiers such a hard time if they were this weak. Turns out, the soldiers were also fighting off a rebellion of angry slaves who cut off their supply lines. Sounds like they treated the slaves horribly. Nero asked what they'd done to provoke the slaves. The soldiers claimed ignorance, but Nero called them out. Oppressors often forget their own cruelty. Before the argument escalated, the bald professor stepped in and asked the gate to be opened so they could clear things up with the slaves. Inside, a group of angry slaves stood ready to fight until the professor raised his hand and said they were sent by the emperor. That calmed them down. Nero noticed one of the slaves resembled Slave C, and as he looked at them, he remembered how it felt to be pushed into a corner like they were. Elsewhere, a soldier informed Olmunuz that Cephas was leading an attack on one of the 3 fortresses. He immediately ordered reinforcements. Terisu asked who Cephas was, and it was revealed that he's a commander who manipulates people by filling them with nothing but their darkest thoughts. Classic mind control. That explains the earlier disturbing scene. This hinted that the slaves at Nero and Nerea's fortress might also be under Cephas's influence. As they made their way deeper into the castle, Gerard asked the slave leader why they revolted. The answer: the nobles were greedy. They cut food rations and banned them from bearing arms. Nero, having experienced that kind of oppression, empathized with their rage. Gerard and the slave leader struck a deal. They'd attempt to negotiate with the nobles, and if things went south, the slaves would help storm the castle. On the way, they passed a statue of Lord Aslan, a noble supposedly famous for championing slave rights. Seemed suspicious. As they neared the gate, a warning shot was fired at the professor. Gerard tried to negotiate, saying they were sent by the emperor, but Lord Aslan denied them entry and ordered them to leave. The slave leader shouts at Aslan, demanding the gate be opened and supplies shared, but the mage fires a fireball at him, which Nero manages to block with his sword. Nero retaliates by destroying part of the castle, but Nereus stops him, warning it'll only make things worse. Nero lashes out at the nobles, calling them greedy pigs. That's when Aslan realizes Nero is a slave. Nero admits it, and Aslan, unlike most nobles, asks if he truly believes all nobles are corrupt, arguing that Nero's view is biased. When Nero turns to Nerea for support, she admits her master was kind, supporting Aslan's point. Nero doesn't back down, so he proposes they meet at the peace statue. There, Aslan meets the slave leader, who turns out to be a duke. Aslan warns Nero that truth is often ugly. Just then, the chair Aslan sits in explodes, triggering the slaves to attack the nobles. Nero is stunned. He always thought the slaves were the good guys. As chaos erupts, the bald professor pulls Nero out of his daze. Thanks to the mage's magic, they manage to retreat. But Nerea is struck by arrows while helping Nero into the castle. The mage heals her, saving her life, though her injuries are still severe. Inside, the mage shows Nero graves of people, men, women, and children, killed by the slaves. Then he reveals the backstory. When Aslan became lord, he granted slaves financial rights, allowing them to join the city's economy and become merchants. This angered commoners and nobles, but Aslan, once a slave himself, pushed forward. As a result, many slaves became wealthy, some even richer than nobles, and began treating the poor with contempt, just like the nobles they once despised. To fix this, Aslan raised taxes on slaves, which sparked their anger. Then Secneum invaded. When soldiers were needed, slaves refused to fight, claiming they were forbidden to carry arms. Later, when supplies were distributed equally, the rich slaves were offended. They thought they deserved more than the poor. So they revolted, hijacking the city's supply deliveries. All they wanted was their own kingdom, becoming exactly what they'd once vowed to destroy. Naturally, Nero was furious and charged out to fight the rebel slaves. Their leader was baffled. Why would a fellow slave oppose them? Maybe because you're insane. Nero shoots back, calling them murderers who even killed children. The leader dismisses it, claiming sacrifices are necessary, just like the emperor once made. But Nero insists the emperor rose through just means, and then starts cutting them down. Elsewhere, Nerea reflects on how Niro always ends up hurting himself when trying to hurt others. Sure enough, guilt eats at him as he battles the slaves. He unleashes powerful magic, stunning even the mage watching. A bald professor explains that this is the power of the shy candidate. Then a bird delivers a message. Cephas is in the city. To win, they need to locate its main body. It's giving serious Among Us vibes. Back on the field, a boy roams with a knife, searching for his dad, the rebel leader. When Niro sees the child, guilt deepens, realizing he might have just orphaned someone. His shadow begins to darken. Chihuahua rushes over with the Cephas news. Meanwhile, the boy finds a body pile, assumes the worst, and stabs Nero's hand. As Niro grips his wound, dark thoughts flood his mind. Just as he's about to cast a deadly spell on the kid, Gerard shoves the child aside, yeeting him to safety, and reveals it was all a trap by Cephas. Suddenly, shadows rise from fallen bodies. Gerard destroys them and urges Niro to find the core. He mentions Cephas often hides it in the brightest place. Niro connects the dots. It must be inside the peace statue. Beneath it, he discovers a secret hatch and descends, only to be greeted by an illusion of Emperor Muren. The fake Muren questions Nero's belief in becoming a hero and claims that, despite Kundan's sacrifice, people stayed selfish and corrupt. Even Kundan, he argues, was driven by his desire for Lunadel. He accuses Niro of growing arrogant, judging other slaves once he gained power. These words hit hard. Niro remembers encountering greedy, corrupt slaves himself. Muren then reminds him how nobles treated his family like animals, suggesting they only oppressed slaves to keep their own desires safe. Muren slowly succeeds in dragging Niro toward chaos, and inside Nero's mind, we see a battle between his hopeful and chaotic sides. Just as he's about to give in, Nerea's voice cuts through the darkness. Her outstretched hand reminds him of her sacrifice and the time they shared. That memory pulls him back. Nerea embodies everything he believes in. She was always there, for protection, support, and strength. She tells Niro that while he's always tried to stand alone, it's okay to rely on others sometimes. Inspired, Niro rises. He remembers his mother's words, "Never appear weak in front of those you want to protect, because their smiles depend on your strength." At that moment, Cephas takes form from a mass of tentacles. Though he failed to corrupt Niro, Cephas is ready to kill him. But Niro, having overcome his inner chaos, is now stronger than ever, unleashing his full potential. A fight breaks out. Niro manages to land a hit, but Cephas strikes back hard. Fortunately, a mana shield kicks in, magic Niro couldn't use before. Realizing how much stronger he's become, he gears up for round 2. As they clash again, Niro recalls Muren's training, how true power awakens by embracing one's inner darkness. With that, he taps into the power of Lugard. Remembering that Secneum's forces are weak to this energy, he fights back. Cephas counters with Secneum's power, but Niro absorbs it using his sword. In that moment, he sees Kundan's seal in his mind. Cephas suspects Niro wields the legendary sword Arctane, which can absorb anything. Meanwhile, Muren is shown speaking to a sword, hinting at a connection. But Niro insists the blade is his, though Cephas argues power lies in the wielder, not the weapon. He tries to finish Niro off, but Niro teleports behind him and delivers a fatal blow. Nothing personal, kid. Elsewhere, Nerea struggles to break through a rock barrier with magic. Frustrated and in tears, she's comforted by Niro, who helps her destroy it. They share a kiss. Finally, the ship sails. With Cephas dead, all the slaves and guards under his control collapse and die too. It turns out Cephas had countless people under his control. Seeing the sheer number of victims, Niro realizes how devastating a demon lord can be. Though the slaves had committed atrocities, they were just puppets, forced to act, and didn't deserve to die like that. Despite their victory, Niro doesn't feel like celebrating. Gerard and the soldiers hail Niro and Nerea as heroes of the Empire, but the weight of what happened keeps Niro subdued. On the journey back, Nerea praises Nero's strength, but he credits her for helping him through it. He also admires her for staying true to herself, never falling to chaos like he almost did. Nerea's warmth and kindness continue to ground him. Niro confesses he's questioning his understanding of people in the world, realizing how little he actually knows. When they arrive at camp, they're greeted by the other 2 regiments, who had also won their battles. Olmu congratulates them, and Gerard makes it clear Niro and Nerea were the true victors against Cephas. Tarasu and Even are stunned. They start to think the pair might be on par with Emperor Muren. Well, maybe not in power, but definitely in heart. Olmu asks Niro if he's found an answer to the question he once posed. Niro replies honestly, he hasn't. That's exactly what Olmu wanted to hear. He explains that there are 2 types of people, those ignorant of their own ignorance who try to dominate others, and those who recognize how little they know and strive to learn. The first remain children, but the latter grow into adults. Niro, by admitting his ignorance, has taken the first step toward maturity. Later, during dinner celebrations, Nerea nods off, and Niro gently takes her to her room. Tirasu and Even watch them, and it's clear to everyone. Niro and Nerea are a couple now. Tirasu is a little jealous, but quietly accepts it. As she walks off, Even follows her and confesses his feelings, but she shuts him down, saying he's made too many mistakes. Oof. Meanwhile, Nerea urges Niro to get some rest too, but he says he's preparing to meet his birth mother. Finally, after everything, a long-awaited reunion is near. The next day, the army marches onward, exhausted from 2 weeks of non-stop travel. Just then, word comes from the emperor. They've been granted rest at the Tower of Desire. Some, including Niro, aren't familiar with the place, so Olmu explains it's where the empire handles internal affairs, stores collected taxes, and also doubles as a preschool. Yeah, strange combo, but sure. When they reach the tower, they find it sealed off by a mysterious barrier. The barrier around the Tower of Desire drops, and the group is welcomed by the administrator, Kusan. He updates Olmu on supplies, but before letting them in, he warns that everyone must follow the tower's rules, which, unsurprisingly, are absurd. Right after entering, a kid hands them a form asking for personal details, which will determine their lodging. Turns out, the tower enforces a strict hierarchy based on social status. As expected, Niro and Nerea are placed at the bottom and given badges that mark their rank. When Niro speaks up casually, the kid snaps, calling him a muzral, basically a fancy word for slave, and demands respect, shocking the rest of the students. Olmu advises Niro to just go along with it, since they won't be staying long, and Niro reluctantly agrees. It's no wonder the nobles here are entitled. This system feeds their egos from childhood. Apparently, Tarasu and Yans had once been invited to study here, but rejected the offer because of these exact rules. Even, on the other hand, graduated from here, which is why he could use magic before even entering Excanum. Kusan warns the group that breaking the rules comes with consequences. He then summons the Roinas, the highest social class, to special quarters. He also invites Tarasu and Yans, but they refuse, choosing to stay with the Muzrals. Kusan doesn't argue, but even joins him. Before leaving, he has the nerve to tell Niro and Miria to take care of the princesses while they're all on the same floor. While exploring, they come across a giant bowl filled with liquid, the source of the tower's protective barrier. It's powered by massive amounts of ore, manually refined by children. Basically, free child labor. Niro is baffled. Why would kids voluntarily come here knowing this? Olmu explains that, like Excanum, graduating from the tower is seen as a privilege, so many fight for a spot regardless of the cost. During dinner, Niro tries talking to the Muzral kids, but they stay silent. The vibe is as dead as a class group chat. The same kid from earlier scolds Niro for speaking at all, since chatting in public spaces is forbidden. He then makes someone clean the cafeteria, even though Niro hasn't finished eating yet. Later, Niro and Miria watch some children playing nearby. Olmu joins them and reveals what he's learned. The tower is actually an experimental facility. The Muzrals? They're all slave kids sentenced to execution. Their only escape is to serve here. This place really gives off Promised Neverland vibes. Everyone's smiling because they're conditioned to be. Olmu explains that unlike Excanum Academy, it's not professors but upper-class students who assign grades to the lower ones, which basically means the elite kids can expel whoever they want. Meanwhile, Kusan reminds Evan of his noble duties and brings up his past mistake inside the tower. Then we're back to Niro, Miria, and Olmu. Olmu summons a pile of coins, and instead of grabbing them, the lower-class kids immediately go fetch the Scoff, a high-class student. The Scoff then tells them to call the Ruanas too. Personally, I'd have taken everything. But Olmu says these kids have been trained to believe they only deserve what fits their rank. So the Muzruls, being slaves, didn't dare touch the coins. They simply alerted their betters. That's the whole point of this tower. It's a social experiment, testing how kids behave when indoctrinated with rigid class values. Niro's shocked, convinced Muren wouldn't approve of this. After all, he used to be a slave himself. But Olmu drops a bomb. Muren actually tightened slavery laws when he became emperor, and he's directly behind this project. Back to Evan, he's shaken by memories of his time in the tower. Kusan helps him up and promises to guide him to the top. Olmu continues, saying money was created by the empire to motivate hard work and keep the system alive. At the tower's peak, Evan and Kusan find a lab filled with capsules, each holding the body of a child marked for execution after being expelled. One of them, a kid Evan personally expelled. He even remembers their name, hinting they were once close. Niro still can't believe Muren is backing this, but Olmu insists he doesn't truly understand the Emperor. Then, Olmu reveals the experiment's true goal, stripping people of their ability to use magic. By closing the third eye, which lets people sense magic, they're aiming to suppress the lower class even more. The problem is, the process is too slow. Kuzan says they're already accelerating it by spraying a potion into the sky. The scariest part? The third eye is tied to the spirit. Once it's shut, people lose not just their magic, but their sense of self too. So, it's like a drug. Kuzan says they're using it to keep the lower class in check. The elites are few and could be easily overrun by the masses. Just then, Evan sees Max's outstretched hand, and we flash back to a time Max broke a teacup. Evan kept it quiet to protect him. Later, Evan gives Max a plate of smoked duck and confesses he's being trained to kill, but doesn't want to. He says if he ever does, it wouldn't be him, it'd be Roina. Then Max is caught stealing something important. He says he needed the money for medicine for his mother. Evan is forced to decide on Max's punishment and chooses expulsion. Back in the present, Max begs Evan to kill him. Evan smashes the glass capsule with his sword, cutting Max clean in half. Brutal. He got Marcoed. Cousin gets mad, saying Max was a valuable specimen. Evan fires back that to the Shadow Lord Secneum. People like Max are worthless, though even worms deserve more respect. Cousin argues they're children of Lugard, not Secneum, and claims his work is noble. Evan calls it evil and tries to cast magic, but Olmu bursts in with Niro, Miria, and others. Niro and Miria are shocked by what they see. Cousin protests, saying Emperor Muren authorized the experiments. Olmu shuts him down with a stack of documents that terrifies Cousin, probably his hidden stash of erotic manga. Olmu had always been suspicious since Cousin seemed unfazed by the war and the tower had weak defenses despite a big budget. Guess where the money went? Olmu dug deeper, suspecting a deal with the enemy. Sure enough, Cousin had promised Secneum's side his research in exchange for safety in the Tower of Desire. With proof in hand, Olmu orders Cousin's arrest, but Evan kills him instead, calling him a traitor. For once, Evan actually did something useful. He kneels by Max, who's somehow still alive, and apologizes. Max reaches out, and Evan ends his suffering with fire. As Evan walks away, he tells Teresu he might not be a good person, but he won't become worse. Could this mark Ivan's turning point? After the incident, the Tower of Desire got a new administrator, and both the 12-class social experiment and Cousin's personal project were shut down. Everything was swept under the rug and kept hidden from the public. We're then shown a montage of battles as our heroes fight Seknu's forces, reshaping their worldview. In one scene, Teresu heals Avon. He tries to make a move on her, but gets rejected. Ouch. Teresu explains she wants to become someone more reserved, and her priority is her family, not romance with Avon or Niro. Before sorting out their feelings, she says they need to graduate from Excanum Academy and save the world. Avon promises he'll change. The fighting continues. During one clash, Niro carries a dying Rivero in his arms. He cries for help, but it's too late. Rivero acknowledges Niro and apologizes for how he treated him in the past. Typical fate of a side character. Niro is left with regret. The montage shifts to focus on Teresu and Avon again. Then finally, the group reaches Noria, the Elven Kingdom. Suddenly, a massive monster attacks the city wall. Definite Attack on Titan vibes. It breaks through, and smaller creatures flood in. On a rooftop, a soldier updates Queen Lunadel, who insists on helping despite her poor health. Another soldier objects, fearing her involvement could endanger the kingdom. Just then, more reinforcements arrive. Excanum's elite unit. Cut to Umu and Niro in battle. Niro slays the Titan-like beast in one hit, ending the fight in a fiery explosion. The joint forces of elves and humans cheer their victory. Queen Lunadel appears, and all the soldiers kneel. When Umu wonders why she greeted them personally despite her illness, she simply says, because they're the kingdom's saviors. She welcomes them to Noria and announces a grand banquet for the next day. Later, Niro visits Niria in her room, struggling with nerves before meeting her mother. He fears she won't remember him, but Niria comforts him. Meanwhile, the elves sing together. Queen Lunadel meets with Teresu, praising her top grades and acknowledging her as a queen candidate. Teresu asks about Rupi, her old pet, now a massive creature. During their reunion, Lunadel brings up a ruin and asks if Teresu knows about one of the 3 elf princesses from another group. Teresu mentions she's never heard of the guy, and turns out neither has her family. Come on, author, you're throwing death flags on Turek like it's a hobby. In the next scene, the queen and the students are sharing a meal. She praises them for bravely representing humanity and gives a speech admiring their resolve to chase their goals. Midway, Avon interrupts, asking if she also loves the darker side of humans. The queen responds that while they hate evil, they understand human flaws and find beauty in the effort to rise above them, hinting at Avan's personal growth. Then Niro jumps in, asking about half-elves. The queen asks about his background, and he reveals he's a former slave and a half-elf. Could this be the long-awaited mother-son reveal? Queen Lunadel expresses deep empathy for half-elves, saying they're born into a struggle they didn't choose, forced to balance conflicting traits. She says she's always wanted to help, and she proves it. She's the one behind the anti-discrimination law for half-elves. Respect. She then asks what elf family Niro comes from. Just as Tarasu is about to reveal the truth, Niro cuts in, claiming his family had no name and that his parents are dead. Oof. His friends are shocked, but Niro insists it's for the best. He's been through a lot, and it's only made him stronger. Nerea tears up. Classic Shidi move. After the queen leaves, Nerea, Avan, and Tarasu confront Niro. They argue he'd be better off if people knew he was Lunadel's son. But Niro says he just wants to be Niro, a soldier, not defined by titles. He also reveals the queen is sick, and he fears that dumping his trauma on her might worsen her condition. Once the banquet ends, the heroes get ready to depart. The queen sends them off with blessings. First is Olnu, whose magic gets a power-up, future MVP confirmed. Then she blesses the elf princesses, Yans and Tarasu, strengthening them as well. When she blesses Niro, something stirs within her. She tells him that one day, he must find the jewel inside him. While she doesn't name anyone, it's implied she meant Condensial, and that she's realized Niro is her son. I'll take that as a partial win. She finishes by blessing the rest of the students. As the students depart, Nerea on horseback, Nerea quietly admires Niro for staying composed during the emotional farewell. Cut to a flashback. The headmistress is seen striking a shady deal with a suspicious man, telling him to open the gates and make it look like they were forced open. Then, in the present, Emperor Muren gives the go-ahead for that plan. Yeah, Muren's starting to look sketchier than a venting imposter. Meanwhile, in a snowy landscape, elf princess Aruvin battles monsters. Just as one is about to strike her down, Turek swoops in and slays it. It's been a while. Turns out they're alone and surrounded, puzzled as to how the creatures got in when a magical barrier is supposed to block them. Suspicions definitely in the air. As they talk, a clawed monster ambushes them, knocking Turek down. Aruvin dodges the next strike and fires arrows, but the beast shields itself. Her shots keep getting blocked until it retaliates with fire. When she's nearly scorched, Turek leaps in, shielding her from the flames. The attack continues, but Aruvin finally finds an opening and lands a shot, only for the monster's body to slam into them, sending both tumbling off a cliff into icy water. They survive the fall, but the cold forces them to huddle close. Turek, shirtless, eventually finds a blanket, and they use it to stay warm. As they snuggle, Aruvin notices a burn on his arm, assuming it's from the fight. Turek brushes it off, but she promises to heal it once her mana recovers. She also spots a bracelet on him, the same one that saved them earlier by generating a barrier. Even from afar, Nerea's got MVP energy. Curious, Aruvin asks why Turek still clings to hope with Nerea, knowing she likes Niro. Turek simply says he'll give up only when his feelings fade. Aruvin quietly respects that kind of emotional honesty, something rare for elves. Noticing Turek getting sleepy, she tells him to rest beside her. He hesitates, unsure, but Aruvin is unbothered. They lie down together, with Turek caught between instinct and respect. The next morning, his burn is healed. Aruvin tosses him a rabbit she hunted. Turek's surprised. Elves don't usually eat meat, but she has no choice in this barren land. Since he saved her multiple times, she leaves the decision to him. He says they'll eat and survive, together. All aboard, the Turek and Aruvin ship just left the harbor. After finishing the rabbit, only the bones remain. Rip, noble rabbit. Turek complains it wasn't enough, and Aruvin teases that it's because he eats a lot while licking her lips. Turek jokes that she must have liked the meat, catching her off guard. No comment. They set off again to locate their allies, deciding to look for farms first so they can get directions to the kingdom. Turek checks if Aruvin's legs still hurt. She admits they do. She used up most of her mana healing him earlier. That's dedication. While walking, they come across a large snow mound. Instead of climbing, Turek tosses Aruvin to the top, surprising her. He leaps up right after, and she can't help but admire his strength. Turek teases her, saying she must be falling for him. When she doesn't deny it, he's thrown off. Aren't elves into slim, pretty boys? Aruvin brushes it off, saying elves have different tastes. That's a win for Turek. Monsters show up again, seemingly endless. Turek, cocky as ever, says his energy's limitless and cuts them down in one blow. He even says he could handle 100. Cue the actual swarm appearing. Nice jinx, champ. Arvin scolds him, warning that words can bring bad luck. They fight off the horde together, with Arvin saving him multiple times mid-battle. Leonidas could never. After surviving the wave, they rest. Arvin heals Turek, and he admits he envies the elves for their longevity and healing magic. But Arvin explains those blessings come with burdens. He then asks why she's always bickering with Tirasu. Arvin surprises him by revealing she respects Tirasu deeply. She's never beaten her in a fight and believes Tirasu will be a better queen. The arguments were just to toughen her up. Tirasu knows this too. Turek teases her for playing the villain. When she asks if she really looks like a witch, he says she looks more like a blood-soaked warrior. They laugh, and as their faces inch closer, Turek kisses her. Straight up, Riz God behavior. Eventually, they find their group again, who are mid-battle. Before jumping in, Aruvin asks if he still has feelings for Nerea. Turek says no, his heart now belongs to someone else, her. And just like that, the love triangle is officially over. Cut to the other team on the move. Olmu notices Niro walking instead of riding and asks him why. Niro says he was walking because he felt bad for the soldiers on foot. But Olmu points out that while his concern is admirable, it's not wise. Other platoon leaders will notice. Some might follow his lead, others might resent him for it, and some will just keep riding and judge him. Even good intentions can backfire. Leaders are expected to ride because they need to stay healthy for the bigger responsibilities they carry. Without realizing it, Niro could be stirring up tension. Niro understands and takes the advice seriously. Olmu then adds that this is just how politics work. He better get used to it. Then, in a sudden shift, Olmu dismounts and says he needs to tell Niro something about Emperor Muren. He reveals he's actually a spy for a rebellion, sent to watch Muren and avenge his murdered family. Honestly, Olmu's backstory sounds like it belongs to a protagonist. Meanwhile, Tarek and his group are still battling monsters. Students are baffled. Aruka's protective magic should have stopped the monsters, but somehow it failed. Something's fishy. Just as the students begin to tire, the headmistress shows up and wipes out a wave of monsters, boosting morale among everyone. But then a mage informs her that Secneum's forces have already reached the Eye of Lugard and sealed one of its fragments. She's stunned, but quickly orders everyone to rush there. When they arrive, though, there are no enemies. A soldier questions the situation. Big mistake. The headmistress suddenly kills him. Everyone is shocked. She begins slaughtering the others too. Total betrayal. She was the trusted, elegant type, and now, not so much. As a student tries to flee, another master blocks the path. Turns out, several masters have turned traitor. Panic spreads. One master attacks Tarek, but he kills him easily. Another comes at him, and Aruin steps in to shield Tarek, still in shock. The headmistress seizes the moment and attacks, claiming she needs Tarek's blood. Thankfully, a loyal master intervenes and tells them to escape. Aruin begs him to save others instead, but the master says there's no one left. They're the only survivors. Moments later, the headmistress kills him. The loss pushes Tarek over the edge. He transforms into a dark, monstrous figure, a rare form known as the Berserker, born from a mix of human and elite demon blood. The headmistress is captivated by his transformation. Let's hope that power keeps them alive. The headmistress keeps hammering them with spells, but Tarek strikes back, shattering her magic shield and injuring her. She retaliates, sending him flying. Classic main character power-up moment. Now wounded, she stops holding back and unleashes a high-level spell, claiming Tarek may be strong, but he's still unrefined. Aruin throws up a defense barrier to block it, managing to hold it off until it cracks. Right before the spell lands, Tarek comes to and blocks it with the last bit of magic stored in Nerea's bracelet. Aruin sees this and comments that Nerea must have truly cared about him. Global support indeed. Aruin then tells Tarek to hold on just one more minute. She has a plan, but as the barrier weakens, Tarek urges her to escape while he keeps the headmistress busy, who then cranks up the power of her spell again. Aruin finally casts her spell, a portal that only one person can pass through before it closes. Bit of a one-way ticket. She tells Tarek to go, but he refuses, not wanting to leave her behind. Aruin explains that the headmistress likely isn't acting alone. There are higher forces serving Secneum. Meanwhile, Olmu and Niro are still talking. Olmu brings up the time Niro said he'd seen eyes like his before, strong, but shadowed. Olmu explains that his family used to guard the Eye of Lugard, but 20 years ago, during the war with Secneum, one of their former slaves and candidate for Shai, Muren, returned and slaughtered the family, destroying the Eye. So yeah, Emperor Muren's the real traitor. Olmu was a child then, but he survived and later joined the rebellion, becoming a professor to spy from within. Niro is stunned. Back with Tarek and Arwen, she insists Tarek's power is greater than hers. He's the one who must survive. As her countdown ends, she uses magic to force him into the portal, sacrificing herself. Cold move, author. Back to Olmu and Niro. Niro asks which rebellion he's part of. Olmu tells him about a hero, once Muren's close friend, who realized Muren was as dangerous as Secneum. That hero built a secret army in Laurentia, Tarek's homeland. And surprise, the hero leading the rebellion is none other than Tarek's father, the Black Knight Gagin. Olmu then reveals his real name, Retinin of the Asbaran family. Niro vaguely recalls the name, and Olmu explains that his lineage has always led a secret organization dedicated to protecting the world from corruption. The Asbarans stood against the rigid class system and were trusted with guarding the Eye of Lugard. Niro wonders why such a powerful family couldn't change the world. Olmu responds, one family alone can't stop a world overrun with corrupt nobles. Olmu recounts the story of Muren, a half-elf slave adopted at age 12 by the noble Asbaran family. Though they gave him love and support, the damage had already been done. His early years were filled with pain, warping his mind and letting a monster take root inside him. At least Muren found some solace in a noble home. Niro, on the other hand, suffered far worse. Recognizing Muren's talent, the Asbarans sent him to Excanum Academy, where he quickly stood out as a prodigy, powerful, charming, with piercing eyes and a gentle face. He seemed destined for greatness, and everyone saw him as the ideal candidate for the Shy. That belief solidified when his sword, Soya, transformed into Arctane. Niro had always believed Arctane was a legendary blade, but Olmu clarifies, Arctane is actually a title and ability. Only those chosen as Shy candidates can unlock it through their weapon. That revelation hits Niro hard. His sword, too, has been growing stronger than his peers. It dawns on him that he's also a nominee for Shy. Olmu continues, Muren returned after destroying Secneum and splitting it into 3 fragments, ensuring they couldn't be sealed again. Shockingly, he then wiped out the Asbaran family. It was a calculated move. Muren was also behind the deaths of Kundan and Estremis. Niro is furious. He had once looked up to Muren, only to learn he was the reason behind his father's death. A deep betrayal. Yet, Muren's true motives remain unknown, even to Olmu and the rebels. No one understands why he fragmented Secneum, or why he's now raising Kundan's descendants, Avan and Miro, under his wing. After the heavy truth, Niro rejoins the army. We flash back to a moment when Olmu told Miro he wouldn't return to Excanum. He'd chosen to fight with the rebels. Niro was upset. Olmu had been his guide and mentor since his early academy days, but Olmu insists Niro, as the Shy, must now walk his path alone. When Niro says Olmu is like a father to him, Olmu jokes he's too old for that role. Uncle will do. Before leaving, he urges Niro not to let his inner darkness take over, but to embrace the hero within. Back in the present, Niro confides in Nerea. He admits the monster inside him is real, but he's determined to follow the path of the hero. They arrive at the academy and are met by the headmistress, who delivers grim news. Grub has been destroyed. It was the Secneum army, and they invaded Aruka. Niro is shocked. It was his doing. Nerea is crushed. She had been close to Grub. With that, the 5th step ends. Meanwhile, the Laurentian army led by Gaon and joined by Turek marches toward Muren. Turek questions the need for such a massive force, but Gaon simply says, Muren is that dangerous. Muren stands before the 3 seers of Noria, infamously dubbed the Big-Breasted Oni sisters, who call him the King of Immorality. He asks if the Emperor will change, but they admit they can't see a future that's already strayed from its course. Annoyed by their vague answer, Muren destroys them out of sheer boredom. So much for meeting your heroes. Muren's just a huge jerk. We shift to a graveyard, where elf princesses Terasu and Yans mourn the fall of a ruin. The headmistress calls the dead students heroes, laying on the theatrics thick. Hollywood would be proud. Nerea weeps for Turek beside Niro. Later, the students gather before 2 professors, worried about Aruka, which seems to have fallen to the Secneum. The protectors are gone, and some students are shocked. Aruka was supposedly guarded by magicians. One even notices a student from Turek's group among them. Plot hole, maybe? They fear the Secneum will march to the Emperor next, unaware that he's already an imposter. Nerea, concerned, mentions their own homeland has lost its defenses. As a backup, they could use an ancient spell to isolate themselves if the human empire, Valencia, falls. I guess I'm part elf, because that sounds like my go-to escape move. Gerard wonders where Olmu disappeared to. That night, the headmistress tells Avan this will be their final lesson. Avan asks if becoming strong like her could help him save his father. She says only Secneum's power, the same one imprisoning Kundan, can free him. Total setup. She adds it's also the only way to stop the 3 pieces from merging, and only someone like Avan, with noble mana blood, can wield that power. Avan agrees to begin the lesson. Meanwhile, Niro finds Nerea unconscious from crying. He heads to the bathhouse to unwind and sees Avan, his arm corrupted. Avan warns him to stay away and slips into the water. He tells Niro that while Niro was born with nothing, Avan was born with everything, yet still craves more. Elsewhere, Tarasu thanks Yans for her support. Yans reminds her a future queen shouldn't break that easily. They talk about humans, their flaws, their capacity for growth, and why elves love them for those very flaws. Back to Niro and Avan. Avan says Niro will never understand the emptiness of having everything, but still wanting more, so much so that you'd risk it all. He's doomed to lose everything, while Niro is fated to gain it all. Niro pushes back, saying destiny isn't fixed and that people create their own path and justice. He adds that no one is truly whole until they do. Then he tells Avan he wants to become complete with him. Bro forgot to say no homo because that line was loaded. Next, the headmistress chats with a crystal ball, revealing only one casualty from Avan's group. She admits she tried to get Niro killed by sending him to Cephas. Plot twist, Niro ended up killing Cephas. MC power unlocked. The voice from the crystal turns out to be the Emperor, who warns her that trying to kill Niro only makes him stronger. He's basically a Saiyan. Wrong universe, but the energy's the same. With Tarek still alive, she assumes Galleon's army is heading for Valencia. The Emperor orders her to wipe out the entire academy, sparing only Avan and Niro. She's thrilled. Cut to Niro knocking on Nerea's door for lunch. When she steps out, he says her puffy eyes look cute. Smooth operator. Despite the chaos, Nerea asks Niro to stay with her until the end. He promises he will, but their moment is cut short by a distant scream. Turns out, Kadia's already massacring students. She doesn't even need a scheme anymore, just brute force. But surprise, she's not the protagonist. Niro remembers what Olnu told him. Kadia is a vampire. Unlike Muren, who's more calculated, Kadia's unhinged. Olnu shared Kadia's twisted backstory, once a quiet student from Excanum who became obsessed with death. She even crawled into a dragon's corpse and stayed inside it for a whole day. Seriously deranged. She had as much mana as Kundan and Astrumus, but it was curiosity, not power, that drove her. When she became intrigued by the Eye of Lugard, she took a job guarding it. Then one day, she killed everyone there and drank their blood. She was imprisoned, but after a talk with Muren, she reformed, or so it seemed, and eventually became the headmistress. Her bizarre path is one of the reasons Olnu became a professor. Hearing all this, Niro realizes Muren and Kadia must have been working together from the start. Two imposters, not one. Olnu's final warning echoes in Niro's mind. If Kadia goes berserk, chop off her head before she can fully unleash her power. Snapping out of the flashback, Niro tells Nerea to stay back. Kadia is now the enemy. Tarasu and Yans arrive, unaware of the danger. Niro yells for them to back off, but it's too late. Tarasu gets hit by Kadia's attack and goes down. Hearing the noise, Evan shows up and finds Tarasu knocked out. Finally, he's not the one getting outplayed by the headmistress. Kadia gets ready to face off against the two shy nominees. Avon, seeing Tarasu down, assumes Kadia is responsible and goes full power, launching Secneum charged magic at her. But Kadia easily dodges. It ends up heading straight for Niro and Nerea. Friendly fire wasn't disabled. Niro shoves Nerea out of harm's way and absorbs the blast with his sword. The moment he does, visions of Secneum flood his mind. He recalls Olmu's warning. Arctane's swords absorb magic and echo its power, which is why he's seeing Secneum. Olmu had also cautioned him to resist Secneum's influence, as it could corrupt him, like it did to Muren when Secneum was destroyed. A little sword antivirus wouldn't have hurt. Niro decides to keep Secneum's power at bay. Snapping back to reality, Niro counterattacks using magic taught by the Emperor. He and Avan team up, managing to knock Cadilla out of the building so the fight doesn't endanger others. The two press the advantage. Niro strikes first. Cadilla blocks, but Avan slips in a hit with his claws. Cadilla teleports away, then hits back. Avan's taken down, but Niro is saved by a magical shield from Nerea. Support MVP right there. Cadilla targets Nerea next, but Yans intercepts with a magical arrow. Turns out her chaotic power is weak against elven nature magic. Seeing an opening, Niro and Avan team up again, eventually slicing off one of Cadilla's arms. But she just levels up, transforming into a monster. She quickly impales Avan, and when Niro attacks with magic, she responds with an even stronger spell. Niro absorbs it again with his sword, and the Secneum visions return. This time Secneum speaks. It tells Niro that humans weren't born of Lugard, but of Secneum's own stomach, as demons, explaining their violent nature. Charming. In the end, Cadilla overpowers both Niro and Avin, knocking them out. With them gone, she targets the remaining students, starting with Miria. Before she can strike, Tarek shows up in berserker mode and slices off her arm. Should have aimed higher. Miria is stunned he's alive, but Tarek doesn't slow down. He charges Cadilla in full frenzy. Since berserkers dominate in close combat, Cadilla switches to ranged attacks. While stalling, Tarek tells Miria to go get Niro. Meanwhile, Niro is still stuck inside his own mind. No sound, no scent, no sensation. It's like he's been banished to the void. But then a small light appears and greets him. It says it's met Miria before, but this is its first encounter with Niro. Niro realizes he's speaking to Lord Lugord. Confused, since he expected to see Secneum, Lugord explains that just as light exists within darkness, he exists within Secneum. To truly grasp the depths of darkness, Niro must first understand real hope. Right after that, Niro snaps back to reality and sees Tarek battling Cadilla. The squad's reunited and ready to throw hands. Niro checks on Avund and learns he's made a full recovery. Together, Tarek, Jans, Avund, and Niro launch another assault. Cadilla's stunned to find Avund wielding more of Secneum's power than she does. Drained and defeated, she surrenders. But as Tarek moves in to finish her, Cadilla has a grim flashback, digging her parents' graves in desperation, passing out from shock, and waking up to find maggots crawling over their faces, and hers. Her servant didn't even bother waking her up. As she mutters her final words, Tarek goes full executioner, slicing her up until Niro steps in. Cadilla's already dead. Tarek really turned rest in peace into rest in pieces. Still raging, Tarek grabs Niro by the head, but Nereus steps in. He remembers how her bracelet saved him so many times, and it calms him down. Meanwhile, Muren senses Cadilla's death and blames her arrogance. We see him leading a horde of monsters toward the academy. The true final boss is on his way. Back at the academy, students and professors are stunned to learn Olmu was a spy. Tarek reveals their bigger problem, Emperor Muren. He's the one who weakened Aruka's magic barrier, orchestrated Cadilla's actions, and is responsible for their friends' deaths. Niro adds that Muren also destroyed the Eye of Lugord and sabotaged the sealing of Secneum. Basically, the guy history painted as a hero is actually working for the enemy. As always, history favors the winners, not the righteous. Elsewhere, Avin enters a room to check on Tarasu. Despite healing attempts from Jans and Nerea, she's showing symptoms that look like poisoning. Avin recognizes it immediately. It's chaos, the same force that runs through him. Normal healing won't work. As he gets closer, Avin has a vision of Butterfly glowing red, questioning his choice to do good instead of embracing chaos. It says love, friendship, and hope are just illusions humans invented to shield themselves from the truth, that they're descendants of Secneum. Chaos begins to take over Avin, but a radiant butterfly appears and urges him to make his own choice. Snapping back to reality, Avin manages to absorb the chaos energy from Tarasu, saving him. Just as relief settles in, a muscular frog-like creature storms the academy. The elf professor is stunned. Excanum should be cloaked, but Nerea suspects Muren led the monsters. Right on cue, doubts creep in. Avin struggles to believe Muren betrayed them after everything. As the group fights off the invaders, a dragon-like monster targets Niro, but is suddenly struck down by arrows. It's Gaian and his army arriving just in time. Gaian warns that Muren is here, and sure enough, Muren shows up. Avin stands protectively by Tarasu, but Muren only flashes a chilling smile. Meanwhile, Niro's group rushes to help Avin, but are shocked to see him calmly walking beside Muren. Avin halts them, saying he'll follow the Emperor. A quick flashback reveals Muren threatened everyone's lives unless Avin surrendered. Gaian tries to intervene, urging Muren not to drag the kids into it. The two former allies now face off. Everyone watches in disbelief, especially Tarek, who can't believe anyone could block his father's sword. Flashbacks show young Gaian and Muren clashing endlessly, admired by their peers. Gaian reminds Muren he never saw him as a servant, but as a warrior he raised like a son. He's crushed by how much Muren has changed. Muren explains his ambition led him to Astromus and Kundin, who offered him magic, something Gaian, despite his strength, lacked. Combining Gaian's might with their magic made Muren unmatched. The memory fades, and the battle rages on. Gaian unleashes his berserker form, but Muren overpowers him in a single blow. Injured, Gaian keeps fighting, declaring that Astromus and Kundin saw Muren as a brother. Their fight intensifies. Muren points out the irony. He, a villain, wields light, while Gaian, the most virtuous, uses chaotic power. Gaian calls it a cursed legacy. As he prepares a final strike, Muren catches Gaian's sword with his bare hand, stunning everyone. Muren stabs Gaian in the stomach with his magic, ending the fight. Poor Tarek, First, he loses his Iruin, now his dad. Muren takes off with Even, and though Niro tries to convince Even to stay, she refuses. After they're gone, Tarek rushes to his father. Cut to Tarasu waking up. Naria tells her the headmistress struck her down with chaos magic, killing her. Confused, Tarasu asks how she's still alive since there's no cure, but Naria explains Even absorbed the chaos from her into his own body. Tarasu asks where he is, but Naria says they have a meeting to attend. Meanwhile, Guyan lies in bed, alive but badly injured. Thankfully, the author gave Tarek a break. Guyan says it's now up to the younger generation to stop Muren, even if it means dying. Tarek doubts he can lead, but Guyan tells him to support Niro instead. Niro, unlike Muren, faced darkness and didn't give in. Niro credits his friends, but Guyan says what matters is that he won. Tarek kneels before Niro, naming him their leader, and the others follow. Tarasu arrives and urges Niro to bring peace. Remembering his adoptive father and his dream for change, Niro accepts. He becomes the rebel king. It's on now. Next, we see a blood-soaked Avan. As the camera pans out, his blood drips onto a jewel, breaking Kundan's seal. Avan sees his father and calls out to him. Then guards drag his grandfather in. Muren stabs him, adding his blood to the jewel. Turns out both father and son's blood are needed to unseal it. Kundan emerges, smiling wickedly, still under Secneum's control. Meanwhile, the rebel army rushes to Laurentia but encounters the Black Dragon, powerful enough to flatten a city. Niro calls it just another hurdle. When the dragons attack, Niro absorbs the magic with Arctane and fires it back, killing the dragon. His allies are stunned. Black Dragon? More like overhyped lizard. Back with Avan, he continues calling out to his father. The jewel now fully unsealed, things are about to get worse. And to top it off, the human army is baffled seeing monsters guard the castle. Still, they stick to orders, attack anyone who threatens the castle. The Emperor's playing everyone like fools. Back to Muren, he's now kneeling before a fully possessed Kundan. Turns out, Secneum planned to make Avan his new vessel since Kundan's body was falling apart. Avan, sharing Kundan's blood and already tainted by chaos, was the ideal host. Once again, Avan gets played. Muren asks Secneum for a reward, eternity. Secneum then turns to Avan, who's devastated, thinking he could still save his father and reseal the god. Just as Secneum begins taking over Avan, Kundan briefly breaks through, urging his son to stay true to his path and keep striving to be good. Meanwhile, the rebel army advances on the castle. Niro breaks off to wipe out a wave of monsters with magic. During this, Secneum completes the takeover of Avan's body, and Kundan's form vanishes. The Emperor checks in, asking if Secneum likes his new body. Secneum's pleased. It's more powerful than expected. Inside his mind, Avan finds himself alone in a field. Tarasu suddenly appears, but Avan can't remember how he got there. She tells him to stop worrying. Now he's stuck in a dream, while Secneum uses his body freely. Outside, Niro and Nerea fight tirelessly at the castle gates. Things get worse when a powerful elf-like monster appears and shatters Nerea's shield. The creature easily overpowers Niro, who admits it's stronger than both Cephas and Kadia. Just before the finishing blow lands, Olnu teleports Niro to safety. Seriously, MVP. Olnu arrives with magicians from his family's old secret organization and launches an attack. He reveals the monster is Nuga, ancient king of Noria, also a half-elf like Niro, but one who turned corrupt and led to the elves' hatred of half-elves. Olnu tells Niro to hop on a wyvern and confront Muren, while his forces stall Nuga. Niro escapes just in time, dodging Nuga's spell. Back inside the castle, Secneum asks Muren about two missing pieces of himself he wants to reclaim. As Muren leads him there, he casually asks why a god like Secneum can't read the thoughts of non-believers. At that moment, a hidden seal triggers, trapping Secneum's new body. Plot twist: Muren played him. He then realizes that even gods like Secneum and Lugard must be creations of something greater, since they can still be fooled. A trail of blood leads to a freshly formed seal, which was triggered by Estrimus' son, who vanished right after the ritual, just like his father. It's revealed he plans to use the remaining descendants of heroes to trap the last god, Lugard, ensuring no gods remain. Meanwhile, Olmu battles the corrupted king. Realizing his magic does nothing, he unleashes his final spell, a massive spear from the heavens. But even that fails. Nuva shatters it easily. Then Nuva casts a deadly spell that wipes out countless soldiers. With Secneum's army taking the upper hand, Olmu begins to despair. At the same time, Niro slips into the castle. Seeing it eerily empty, he prepares for a trap, and sure enough, Muren ambushes him. Niro counters with Arctane, thinking it can overpower Muren's blade, but his own sword shatters. Muren stabs him. So much for the power of friendship. Niro regains consciousness, bloodied in the same state as Avan. He tells Muren he was meant to be their light, but Muren coldly replies that he was never the light, only the darkness forced to endure humanity's ugliness. Then Muren reveals his plan: summon Lugurd's true body by sacrificing heroic blood. Blood for the blood god, indeed. Lugurd appears, but is quickly chained by a possessed Avon. Muren slashes Lugurd into 3 parts, then has the guards bring the eyes of Secneum to seal 2 of them. His plan? Keep 1 fragment of each god alive, one possessing Avon, the other intended for Niro, so he can control them like puppets. The man's on a full-blown god complex. A flashback shows Muren destroying Secneum. In that moment, he became enlightened and met the Architect, the true god of the universe. Straight-up solo-leveling vibes. The Architect saw Muren's desire for a godless world. Muren confirmed it, condemning the balance of light and dark. The Architect explained that Secneum and Lugurd were born from the minds of humans, the real children of creation. When asked if he speaks for humanity, Muren claimed to have the strongest will. That answer earned him a scroll detailing how to control the gods. He's been following it ever since. Now Niro is trapped inside his own mind, just like Avon. There, Lord Lugurd appears, revealing that they too were born from humanity's imagination, mere creations of the true children of the Architect. Humans came before the gods. Lugurd explains that ancient humans, self-created beings, used the power of their minds to bring things into existence. Elves were born from their longing to be guided toward the light. Monsters, also their creation, forged from a desire to balance order with chaos. This eventually led to the Genesis War, where the bloodshed birthed 2 gods, Secneum, to fix imperfections, and Lugurd, to bring hope and end the fighting. The ancient humans handed all their power to these gods. But Muren isn't like those ancients. He wants a world free of divine interference, where humans and elves live on their own terms. Surprisingly, Lugurd agrees. Secneum doesn't. She believes that even if she's sealed away, the chaos in humanity will bring her back, and she'll eventually kill Muren. She's playing the long game. Lugurd then urges Niro to end it all by killing him. Doing so would also kill Secneum, wiping out the gods for good. With Secneum realizing her fate, Lugurd tells Niro this final choice will reveal the truth. Will chaos win, or will humanity move forward without gods? Niro makes his decision and stabs Lugurd's heart, destroying both gods in one strike. He's then transported to the Architect. Niro asks if humans were made for good or evil. The Architect replies, they are 50 parts chaos, 51 parts order, just enough to always move forward. When Niro returns, Muren is stunned that he broke the seal. Niro simply says, the gods are already dead. Absolute mic drop. Meanwhile, Nuga is still dominating the battlefield, crushing rebels in the secret group with raw strength. Back to Muren. He laughs in disbelief. Gods weren't supposed to die by human hands. But Niro explains, Lugurd chose death. Muren celebrates, thinking he's now the strongest of the self-created and ready to ascend as a new god. But when he tries to unleash magic against Niro, nothing happens. Looks like someone didn't get the memo. With the deaths of Lugurd and Secneum, beings originally tied to the gods, mana vanishes from the world. Nuga, mid-battle and ready to wipe out the army, suddenly loses his magic. Olnu also crashes to the ground, unable to use flight spells. Furious, Muren attacks Niro, shouting that he can recreate mana as a descendant of the Architect. Niro refuses to believe him, until he realizes he can't use magic anymore either. Nuga claims he's still superior to humans, having trained for 10,000 years. Muren echoes this, pummeling Niro while insisting his strength surpasses most. But Niro seizes a shard of Secneum's eye and wounds Muren's neck. Meanwhile, Nuga and Olnu prepare to fight, with Mu, once a magician, opting for hand-to-hand combat like a true badass. Before their clash, though, the elves of Noria, led by Queen Lumidel, rain arrows on Nuga. Kara arrives with another human army. Inspired, the castle's defenders rebel against the Emperor and join the attack on the monsters. Olnu realizes Niro must have succeeded in slaying the gods. As Muren readies to kill Niro, Avon steps in. Niro tells Muren he's alone, unlike him. He has friends. He places a hand on Muren's shoulder and utters the spell, Anacrasia. To Muren's shock, it works. Niro can still use magic, and he dies from the spell. 2 years later, Tarek stands in a lonely field, reminiscing about the past. In Noria, Teresu is now queen and learns Lumidel has gone traveling. Avon, now emperor, announces the abolition of slavery, an unexpected turn for the once-hated Saski. A flashback shows Niro telling Avon he couldn't rule as a half-elf, so he passed the mantle to him. Resistance stirs against Avon's new policies, but elsewhere, Lumidel and Olnu reach a quiet village, Nero's new home with Miria and his siblings. Once a slave who knew only darkness, Nero found the light, unlike the first. He became the slave bee.